The Sakurada family has 9 children, made up of 6 girls and 3 boys. They live a pretty normal life in a typical Japanese household. One morning, Aoi, the eldest of the Sakurada siblings, woke up Akane and Hikari. She told them that everyone else was already up and getting ready to leave. Akane, the 4th child, was shocked to see that it was already 10 minutes past 7, and she rushed to get ready for school. Mornings at the Sakurada household are like a battlefield because there are so many of them. Every day they have to compete for the bathroom and toilet. Aoi was helping their mother prepare breakfast. That morning, their mom, Satsuki, was making vegetable omelets. She reminded the kids not to leave any food behind. The Sakurada family had breakfast together before heading out. Haruka, the 6th child, told their mom that they were out of toilet paper. Misaki, the 5th child, asked whose turn it was to do the monthly shopping. It turned out to be Shu's responsibility, and he said he would go shopping after school. Satsuki felt very lucky to have children like them. That is just a glimpse of daily life in the Sakurada family. Even though the siblings often cause problems for each other, they do their best to get along. At first glance, the Sakuradas might look like a regular big family, but there is something special about them, something that sets them apart. Their father, Soichiro Sakurada, is actually the king of the country. That morning, Soichiro was about to leave for work. He mentioned that he would be having dinner at home that night. Aoi, Akane, Kanade, and Shu left for school together. On the way, they were greeted by several people they passed by. Akane looked embarrassed and even tried to hide behind Aoi. Kanade was surprised that Akane was still shy around others and told her she needed to fix that bad habit. Living like ordinary citizens was their father's idea. As king, he wanted his children to experience life as normally as possible. But that choice brought along its own problems. It turned out that the siblings were constantly being watched by surveillance cameras. The cameras changed locations every week. Akane was startled when a camera suddenly pointed at her. She did not want to be filmed at all, and she had even memorized the locations of every camera. The cameras were meant to protect the Sakurada children, but to Akane, the 2,000 cameras scattered across town were way too much. Kanade was amazed that Akane could remember all the camera locations. If she knew where they were, she would definitely use that to win over the public, especially since the Sakurada siblings were candidates for the next king. Akane could not understand why they even needed an election for the next ruler. That had been Soichiro's decision as both their father and the current king. He had announced that once Aoi graduated from high school, they would hold an election to choose the next monarch. That announcement came in April, and the election would be held the following March. Akane never imagined that their father would take it that seriously. Kanade and Shu picked up their pace because they were worried about being late. Aoi encouraged Akane to hurry up too, but Akane was still anxious about the cameras that kept focusing on her. Aoi offered to walk in front of her to draw the camera's attention away. Akane was confused because she had just found a safe path without cameras, but now one had been relocated there. Aoi reminded her that if she kept avoiding cameras, they would end up late. In the end, Akane had no choice but to use her flying ability to avoid being tardy. Every member of the Sakurada family had a special power, which was proof that they were part of the royal family. Akane's ability was to manipulate gravity on herself and anything she touched. While flying, Aoi asked if Akane could slow down because the wind had blown her skirt and her underwear had shown. They nearly fell because they were not being careful. That day in the Sakurada kingdom, Shiro, one of the royal advisors, scolded Soichiro for taking the crown outside the palace. Just imagining the crown getting lost gave Shiro a stomachache. Soichiro brushed it off, saying Shiro was always too anxious. He then asked how the children were doing. Shiro reported that Shiri had already arrived at kindergarten. Misaki, Haruka, Hikari, and Teru would get there in 5 minutes, while Shu and Kanade were expected in 10. Aoi and Akane might have used their powers, since the cameras could not track them. Soichiro reminded Shiro to keep an eye on the children. After that, Soichiro was ready to begin his royal duties, and the palace guards escorted a television crew inside for the scheduled broadcast. Meanwhile, the bell rang at Sakurada Royal High School. Akane had just arrived when her 2 friends came up to her. They knew mornings were always tough for Akane. For her, both school and home were the only places where she could escape from all the eyes constantly watching her. Before she knew it, classes were over, and her time enjoying school had come to an end. Karen commented that no one enjoyed school life more than Akane, and that was because her friends never treated her differently. To them, she was just a friend. Right then, Aoi came to Akane's classroom to pick her up. As soon as she walked in, Akane's classmates surrounded her. Aoi was popular wherever she went. That afternoon, Akane and Aoi walked home together. Akane told Aoi how amazing she was since people seemed to like her no matter where she went. Suddenly, they heard a girl scream. Someone had just stolen her purse. Akane immediately got ready to use her powers and chase after the thief. As she leaped into the air, she realized her skirt had flown up, giving the thief a clear view. Embarrassed and flustered, she kicked him on instinct. The police quickly arrived and arrested the thief. Moments later, a crowd of reporters surrounded Akane, asking her about what happened. Since she was extremely shy, she could not bring herself to show her face. The story about Akane catching the thief made it to the news that day. Back at home, Akane was completely mortified. Once again, she was on TV. Aoi tried to reassure her, saying it was a good thing. Their mother praised her too, saying it was important for people to get to know her. Shu agreed, especially since the election was coming up next year. Hikari was thrilled to see Akane on TV. The news also showed a public popularity ranking. According to the survey, Aoi was well loved by everyone. Kanade was also extremely popular, and surprisingly, many people were hoping Shiri would be chosen. The anchor mentioned that Akane's ranking would probably rise too, thanks to her brave actions. When Akane heard that, she got even more embarrassed. Apparently, the surveillance cameras had caught her entire stunt on video. Not long after, Soichiro returned home earlier than usual. He asked if any of the kids had plans for the weekend. Hikari got excited and asked if he was taking them somewhere, but Soichiro had a different plan. They would all be appearing on TV. That weekend, the entire Sakurada family was on television. They were going to compete in a game show and show off their powers. The game was a mission to save Dandy, a stuffed doll placed on a rooftop, watched by the entire audience. The Sakurada children had to collect as many dandies as they could and drop them into a basket below. Before the event started, a message from King Soichiro was broadcast. He encouraged his children to do their best so the citizens could get to know them. He also announced that whoever scored the lowest would have to clean the palace toilets. The kids were stunned by the punishment. Why did there have to be a consequence like that? But Akane actually preferred the idea of cleaning toilets over being the center of attention. They had 60 minutes to complete the game. Not long after, the event began. Terry was the first to move. His power allowed him to exceed human limits. He was basically a superhuman. Thanks to his ability, he climbed the building with ease. Unfortunately, something unexpected happened. The building he was climbing began to crack and he fell. Not long after, Hikari sprang into action. Her ability, known as the Hand of God, allowed her to control life itself. She could manipulate the growth of living things. She used this power to make a tree grow tall enough for her to reach the top of a building. Teru, seeing this, said she was amazing. Unfortunately, Hikari made the tree grow too tall, which made it hard for her to reach the rooftop. The tree would return to its original size within 24 hours. Kanade was surprised by what Hikari did. She then used her own power called the Creator or Gate of Heaven. She created several drones and sent them flying up to retrieve the dandy. Kanade knew that every item she created would automatically deduct money from her bank account. The drones collected the dandy and dropped it into her basket. At that point, Teru had earned 4 points, while Kanade had 5. Seeing that, Misaki got excited. Her power, called One for All, allowed her to create up to 7 copies of herself. She commanded her clones to go collect the dandy, and they climbed up using the emergency stairs. At the same time, Shiri was off on her own, admitting that she did not quite understand what was going on. Aoi came over and asked what was wrong. Shiri explained that the fire hydrant man gave her a shortcut, but she did not get it. Aoi asked what exactly he told her. Shiri replied that he said, "Freight elevator B2, go up to the 27th floor." Hearing that, Aoi understood it was a route. Shiri then asked how Aoi knew that. It turned out Aoi had been to that place before. Shiri's ability, called Soulmate, let her talk not only to animals but also to inanimate objects. Meanwhile, Aoi's power, perfect memory, or invisibility gave her an unshakable memory. She never forgot anything she had seen. That was when Shu decided to begin his run. His power transporter let him instantly teleport himself and anything or anyone he touched to wherever he wanted. Thanks to that, Shu was able to collect several dandies in no time. Haruka was determined not to come in last, so he started moving as well. His ability, Next Possibility, allowed him to see the most likely outcomes from a range of potential futures. He approached Akane and told her to stay calm. According to him, if she kept standing still, there was an 87% chance she would end up in last place and a 74% chance he would. But if they worked together, those chances would drop by 25%. Akane said she did not mind coming in last because she did not want to stand out any more than she already did. Besides, the punishment was just cleaning toilets. Haruka then asked if she knew how many toilets there were in the palace, and that if she did it, she would end up meeting a lot of people. After hearing that, Akane felt more motivated to join the race and confidently said she would come in 8th. Haruka invited her to team up with him. Akane's ability, Gravity Core, let her control the gravitational force of her own body and anything she touched. With Haruka, she took off and began flying toward the rooftop. Haruka was confused about why Akane was flying so slowly, since she usually flew straight up in one go. Akane said she could not go faster because she was afraid her underwear might show. Haruka gave her a push to help her reach the rooftop faster. Akane blushed and told him that just because they were siblings did not mean he could do something like that. Kanade noticed what the two of them were doing and found it odd. Meanwhile, Shu had just picked up his 50th stuffed toy. Teru, watching, commented on how impressive Shu really was. Suddenly, Akane and Haruka landed near them and almost ran into Teru. Luckily, Shu teleported just in time and took Teru with him to safety. They ended up in a place surrounded by blooming cherry blossoms. Back near the rooftop, Haruka told Akane about her clothes. It turned out that during the chaos, Shu had accidentally taken Akane's skirt with him, which was obviously super embarrassing for her. The race finally ended. Shu came in first place, while Akane and Hikari finished with the lowest scores. Hikari was surprised since she felt like she had worked so hard. But according to Misaki, Hikari had just been sitting in the tree the entire time. Next, the host announced the current rankings in the election to decide the next king. There were still 3 people who had not appeared in the top 3 yet. They revealed that Kanade was in 3rd place, Akane in 2nd, and Aoi had taken 1st place. Back at home, Akane could not stop thinking about the embarrassing moment during the race, specifically, what happened with her underwear. Even during dinner, she did not touch her food, even though their mother had made her favorite dish, steak. Saochuru reminded everyone that his children were born into the royal family, which meant they would always attract public attention. It might be a burden sometimes, but as members of the royal family, they had duties and responsibilities. They were symbols of the country, and also its source of hope. Saochuru admitted he did not yet know who would be his successor, but what he truly wanted was for each of his children to grow up with strength of heart. That day, their father brought the crown home again. Saochuru explained that he had already contacted the palace. Later that night, Akane sat quietly near the door, feeling down. Aoi came over and asked why she was sitting there. Akane confessed that she wanted to be like a dandelion blooming in the front yard, something quiet and unnoticed, because she no longer wanted to be watched or draw attention to herself. To Aoi, if such a path existed, then Akane was the one who should become king. That way, she might be able to get rid of the surveillance cameras and put an end to the royal family's news broadcasts. Hearing that gave Akane the confidence to aim for the throne, hoping it would allow her to live a peaceful life. That day, Akane and Hikari were cleaning the toilets as punishment for ranking low in the dandy catching competition. Hikari wondered why they had to do that during Golden Week, and Akane couldn't believe how many bathrooms there were in the castle. After finishing their chore, they had to prepare for a traditional pop-up concert at the Sakurada Castle, scheduled for the last day of the holiday. All of King Saochuru's children were present for the concert, and of course it was broadcast on TV. The next morning, all the Sakurada siblings got ready to resume their usual routines before heading to school. Even though they were members of the royal family, they lived like ordinary citizens, just as Saochuru had planned. That morning, Akane greeted Kanade and Misaki, who were brushing their teeth. Kanade reminded Akane that there was a student committee meeting that day, which would be attended by class representatives from every grade. When Kanade was about to leave, Akane asked why she was heading out so early. Kanade explained that she didn't want to walk to school with Akane, since going with her would take forever because Akane always tried to avoid the surveillance cameras on the way. As Kanade stepped outside the house, a woman greeted her and asked why she was up and out so early. Kanade said she had a student council meeting to attend since she served as the vice president. The woman commented that it must be a tough job, but Kanade replied that she actually enjoyed doing it. Soon after, Akane ran to catch up, wanting to go to school together. They eventually walked together, although Kanade warned Akane not to cling to her like a ghost. She also asked Akane to stop her bad habit of avoiding the surveillance cameras, which were just doing their job. Akane said that if she became the next monarch, the first thing she would do is get rid of those cameras. Kanade asked if she was really serious about becoming queen. She admitted that Akane might actually be capable of doing it, but pointed out that being queen would only bring her more attention. Kanade said she was sure that she herself would be the one to become queen. Akane begged her, saying that if Kanade ended up on the throne, she should promise to eliminate the cameras. Deep down, Kanade also wished she could escape all the constant surveillance, but with so many cameras around, she couldn't risk showing her bad side. As they passed by a guy who greeted them, Akane looked visibly panicked and embarrassed. Kanade found it hard to believe that someone as shy as Akane could be a class representative, but it turned out Akane knew almost everyone at school. Kanade then said Akane should try to get to know everyone in the entire country. That way, maybe she would feel more at ease. Akane laughed, saying that was impossible, especially with how many people lived in the country. Kanade asked again how Akane even became the class representative. Akane explained that every group needs someone to mediate, but no one else wanted the job. Plus, being the class rep allowed her to keep an eye on everyone. And when someone had a problem, they would naturally turn to her for help, and wasn't that something she should respond to? Kanade was impressed. Even though Akane's personality didn't seem suited for it, she really did have the qualities of a royal family member. Out of nowhere, Akane asked Kanade to make a limousine using her special ability, so they could go to school in style. Every member of the royal family had their own unique power. Kanade's ability was creating objects out of nothing, but the cost of the item would automatically be withdrawn from her bank account. Kanade replied that Akane was basically just asking her to buy a limousine. Akane realized what that meant and then suggested maybe a dragon or a flying carpet instead. Kanade was stunned and asked if Akane had any idea how expensive it would be to create a dragon. Kanade instantly took out her phone to check the stock market. Akane told her she didn't need to be so anxious about money. She then asked Kanade how much money she had in her bank account. Kanade casually said it was about the same as the national budget. Akane was completely shocked when she heard that. All the way to school, Akane kept clinging to Kanade, which made their classmates comment on how close the two seemed. Akane wondered why Kanade always looked so cheerful in front of others. She knew Kanade was passionate about the upcoming election, but she felt that Kanade didn't need to worry so much about how people saw her. Kanade then asked if Akane was actually talking about herself. Kanade really wished Akane would stop talking so much, but she needed to tell her off without damaging her own image. Kanade asked Akane to let go of her hand, which she had been holding onto the whole time. Unfortunately, Akane refused. She knew that if she let go, Kanade would definitely run away from her. Kanade said there was no way she would do that and insisted that suddenly running off in front of everyone would be way too embarrassing. Trusting her words, Akane finally let go, only for Kanade to immediately sprint away. Akane chased after her, and both of them eventually got tired and stopped in a narrow alley. Kanade was surprised that Akane didn't just fly to school. Akane explained that if she flew, her underwear might show. According to Kanade, if she didn't want her underwear to be seen, then maybe she should just take it off entirely. At that moment, Akane spotted a cat crossing the street while a truck was speeding toward it. She quickly flew up to rescue the cat, and the truck nearly hit her. Thankfully, Kanade managed to create a tall wall that stopped the truck just in time. Kanade immediately hugged Akane and reminded her not to be so reckless. After all, she only had the body of an ordinary girl. The truck driver came over and scolded them. Kanade apologized, explaining that Akane had flown without thinking and caused the problem. The driver then realized that the two girls standing in front of him were actually members of the Sakurada royal family. Thankfully, Akane and Kanade made it to school on time. It had taken them a while to get there since they had to remove the wall Kanade had created earlier that morning. The wall had been made from material that absorbed shock. Akane was surprised that Kanade made it so big. Akane apologized for making Kanade spend money and asked how much it had cost to make that wall. Akane insisted on paying her back and said she would look for a job. Kanade told her not to worry about it. When Kanade revealed that it had cost 40 million, Akane was completely shocked by how expensive it was. That spring, the girl named Hana met Shu. At that time, Hana was feeling lonely because she had been placed in a different class from all of her former classmates. Not long after, Hitami came over to greet her. Hana felt relieved since she hadn't had anyone to talk to before and didn't recognize any of her new classmates. Hitami told her that one of their old grade school friends, Yuji, was also in that class. Hana immediately approached Yuji and said it had been a while since they last met. Unfortunately, Yuji didn't remember her. He even called her by the wrong name and thought they had been classmates in 6th grade, but in fact they had only shared a class in 4th grade. Hana realized it was probably because she had moved away back then, and it wasn't likely that Yuji would remember her. She had only returned to the city the previous year. Soon after, Shu came over to say hi. Surprisingly, he still remembered her. Hana was so touched that she started crying. Shu even remembered that they had been in the same class back in 4th grade. Seeing Hana cry left Shu confused, and Hitami instantly hit him on the head for making Hana cry. After school, the Sakurada siblings gathered to draw lots for their weekly house chores. Akane asked if Shu could take care of the grocery shopping instead. She said she was fine doing other tasks like cleaning, laundry, and cooking. Akane didn't like going shopping because there were too many surveillance cameras watching her. Misaki responded that if that was the case, then Akane should handle all the other chores aside from shopping. However, Aoi reminded everyone that they had already agreed to support each other, so the tasks needed to be divided fairly. Everyone picked their tasks, and Akane ended up taking the last remaining lot. Just as she feared, she got the shopping duty. Akane really didn't want to leave the house, but Shu pointed out that their fridge was completely empty. Hikari mentioned she was really craving curry and even offered to go with Akane. Still, Akane said she just couldn't bring herself to go outside because of her hatred of being filmed. Hikari found it strange, especially since Akane had already been caught on camera before and had drawn a lot of attention. Akane insisted that she never intended for that to happen and didn't want to do anything embarrassing in public. To Hikari, though, it was already too late to worry about something like that, especially since, according to her, Akane's underwear had probably already been shared all over the internet. That only made Akane even more frantic, and she became more determined not to step outside. Seeing her like that, Shu offered to switch chores with her, but only on one condition. Akane had to wear her ponytail higher for 1 whole month. Akane said the kind of hairstyle didn't suit her and pointed out that the chore assignments only lasted for a week. Eventually, she agreed to the deal but asked if it could be just for 3 weeks instead. Shu accepted her counteroffer. The next day, Hana was waiting eagerly for Shu in class, wondering what kind of conversation they might have that day. She was completely caught off guard when Shu suddenly showed up right in front of her. Surprised, she let out a loud shout, which startled Shu so much that he accidentally spit out the milk he was drinking. He quickly apologized, while Hana couldn't help feeling happy that Shu had finally looked at her and spoken to her. Hitami, however, was annoyed by the scene and scolded Shu. Hana rushed off to the restroom to clean her hair and face. She couldn't believe Shu had actually looked at her for so long earlier. Hitami told her not to worry about it, pointing out that Shu was probably just looking in her direction because his seat was directly behind hers, and besides, wasn't Hana always staring at him during class anyway? Panicking a little, Hana asked if they could switch seats. But when Hitami asked if she was absolutely sure, Hana quickly backed out. Then Hitami asked what exactly Hana liked about Shu. Embarrassed, Hana asked why she was suddenly being asked such a question and tried to change the topic. According to Hana, Shu was a kind person. He had once lent her an eraser, complimented her new bangs, and hadn't forgotten about her. Though, as Hitami pointed out, she had done all those things too. Hana responded that maybe, just maybe, she liked Hitami as well. Hitami accidentally pushed Hana in Shu's direction. As she bumped into him, Hana felt oddly calm when she caught his scent. Shu was confused and asked what Hana was doing. She quickly apologized and said she had tripped. Then she asked if he was hurt. Shu said he was fine, and that made Hana feel relieved. She apologized again before running off. Shu then turned to Hitami and asked if Hana always acted that formal. He also noticed that she never looked him in the eyes when they talked. Later that day, when classes were over, Hitami asked Hana if she wanted to walk home together. But Hana said she felt like she had forgotten something important. After thinking about it for a moment, she realized she hadn't said goodbye to Shu. She rushed off to find him, only to see that Shu was already leaving, with a girl walking beside him. Hana couldn't help but wonder who the girl with twin tails clinging to Shu was. That day, Shu was walking home with Akane. Akane had tied her hair higher than usual, just like Shu had suggested earlier. Meanwhile, Hana was secretly following the two of them. She overheard Shu saying that he did not mind walking home with that girl every day. Hana assumed the girl was Shu's girlfriend, so she kept tailing them. She also heard them chatting about shopping and dinner, which led her to think they might be living together. Shu encouraged Akane to get more used to the environment around them. Since they were part of the royal family and seen as national symbols, they would always be in the public eye. He believed Akane should be proud of being part of the royal family and begin settling into that role. Akane started to understand his point. After all, she was a member of the royal family too. Still, Shu wasn't asking her to change overnight. Hana couldn't quite catch all of their conversation, but from a distance, it looked like their bodies were pretty close. At that moment, Shu noticed that someone was following them. He grabbed Akane and quickly led her into a narrow alley. Hana ran after them, only to be shocked when she suddenly came face to face with Akane. Akane immediately recognized Hana as one of Shu's classmates. Shu then stepped out and asked why Hana had been following them. Hana, clearly flustered, struggled to come up with an answer. Shu asked if there was something difficult to say. Stammering, Hana finally admitted that she liked Shu and was worried about him. Shu didn't expect that and said he was really happy to hear how she felt. Unfortunately, he explained that he needed to focus on the upcoming election and was busy trying to come up with strategies to prevent Kanade from becoming the next monarch. Akane was surprised to hear that Shu was actively trying to stop Kanade from winning the throne. Hana then asked if it would be okay for her to wait until the election was over, even though it was still a year away. She said she didn't mind waiting. Shu promised that he would definitely give her an answer when the time came. Hana was touched and thanked him, visibly moved by his response. Akane suggested that Shu walk Hana home, saying she could head back by herself. However, Hana declined and chose to go home on her own. As she walked away, Akane asked Shu why he didn't go after her. Shu replied that Hana was stubborn and might just end up causing trouble if he did. He also added that Akane was pushing herself too hard by insisting on going home alone. Akane seemed a little sulky during the walk back and Shu apologized. That night, Hana talked to Hitomi on the phone and told her what had happened. Hitomi said she was going to punch Shu the next day, but Hana quickly stopped her and warned that she would never forgive her if she actually did it. Hitomi laughed and joked that Hana was acting like she was Shu's girlfriend. Embarrassed, Hana immediately hung up. A moment later, her phone rang again. Thinking it was Hitomi calling back, she picked up, but it turned out to be Shu. He just wanted to make sure Hana had gotten home safely. Hana was stunned and her face turned bright red. After saying goodnight, Shu ended the call. Still in disbelief that Shu had called just to say goodnight, Hana started to wonder if he might actually have feelings for her too. Meanwhile, Shiri was reminded of something Yuji had once said. Yuji was surprised that Shu remembered Hana at all. But according to Shu, there was no other girl as genuine as Hana. Yuji couldn't quite understand Shu's perspective, which turned out to be more thoughtful than he had assumed. He hadn't expected Hana to have grown more refined either. Shu explained that Hana was just like any ordinary girl, and there was a calm, down-to-earth quality that naturally radiated from her. He felt that Hana hadn't changed at all since their days in grade school. That night, before going to bed, Akane couldn't stop thinking about Shu possibly dating Hana after the election. She still didn't understand why Shu was so against the idea of Kanade becoming the next monarch. The thought of the upcoming election left her feeling uncertain and overwhelmed. That day, Ikari went to school with her two friends. When they saw a poster of the king candidates, her friends said they were definitely going to vote for Hikari. At a glance, she looked just like any ordinary grade school student, but in reality, she was a member of the Sakurada royal family and one of the candidates for the next king in the upcoming spring election. According to the previous rankings, Aoi was the most popular among all the siblings, followed by Akane in second place and Kanade in third. Hikari was ranked fifth. She had even been beaten by Shiri. In Hikari's opinion, a king should look dignified, stand out, and be popular. She was confident that she would definitely become king. That weekend, Akane was surprised to find that it was her turn to go grocery shopping again, even though she really didn't want to leave the house. Hikari said she was craving curry. Akane was extremely anxious about the surveillance cameras outside as she stepped out, but Hikari told her it was pointless to worry, since her underwear had already been broadcast all over the country anyway. Kanade asked if anyone was planning a campaign. Teru and Hikari admitted they were thinking about it, but Kanade didn't see them as threats. Akane disagreed because she felt Hikari had been putting in real effort. Hikari believed that if she got serious and used her ability, gathering votes would be a piece of cake. She was sure the public would love her mature charm, which she could showcase thanks to her ability to temporarily manipulate the growth of living beings. Misaki reminded everyone that the effect only lasted for 24 hours. But Kanade pointed out that everyone already knew Hikari was just 10 years old, so altering her appearance was meaningless. After all, she was only changing how she looked, and Kanade warned her not to try attracting people's attention based on appearances alone. Hikari was puzzled and asked if Kanade wasn't the one who cared a lot about her own looks too. Hikari confidently said that in the future, her chest would be much larger. Kanade, however, said that shape was more important than size. Still, Hikari insisted that size was what really mattered, and she claimed that Shu had told her so. Shu quickly denied it. Hikari asked Akane what she thought, but after noticing Akane's flat chest, she apologized right away. Kanade mentioned that Aoi's lack of interest in the election could be an advantage for the rest of them, but Aoi herself might not see it that way. Kanade suspected that if Aoi got serious, she'd be unbeatable. She also believed that Aoi didn't entirely agree with the idea of becoming king and would probably do something to hurt her popularity. Akane was curious and asked what kind of thing could damage Aoi's popularity. Kanade jokingly said like eating Akane's pudding without asking. Akane replied that something like that would just make her mad, not lower anyone's popularity. Then Hikari urged Akane to hurry up and go shopping and offered to go with her. The two of them walked out together. When they noticed a security camera, Hikari thought it might be a good chance to get some attention. But Akane stopped her from taking that route. She warned Hikari that the public wouldn't appreciate it if she was only trying to show off. Hikari felt like it was a waste to go with Akane since she really just wanted to be caught on camera and get noticed. While they were walking through a narrow alley, Hikari spotted a stray cat and became curious. She quickly ran after it. As she followed it near a main road, Akane suddenly realized that Hikari was no longer beside her. At that moment, Hikari was still chasing the cat and ended up jumping into some bushes. Akane began to panic when she realized Hikari had gone missing, and she wondered if that meant she had to do the shopping all by herself. Summoning her courage, Akane decided to ask someone nearby if they had seen Hikari, but the person she spoke to seemed frightened, likely because of Akane's intense way of speaking. Meanwhile, the cat Hikari was chasing had climbed up a tree and couldn't get back down. Hikari tried to help it by climbing the tree, but she wasn't able to. She thought maybe if she grew herself taller, she could reach the cat. However, when she used her ability to turn into her adult form, the cat suddenly became aggressive upon seeing her transformation. Akane finally spotted Hikari, but when Hikari turned toward her, Akane panicked and ran away, thinking she had the wrong person. Hikari called out, confirming that it was really her. Akane quickly invited her to go shopping, and although Hikari wanted to join, the clothes she was wearing had become too tight because her body had grown. When they returned home, Shu didn't recognize her at all. To fix the situation, Hikari shrank Akane's body so they could swap clothes. As soon as Misaki saw the tiny girl, she scooped her up and carried her inside. Shu pointed out that Akane's body was way too small. Hikari had accidentally shrunk her too much. He explained that the effect would wear off in 24 hours, meaning Akane would be Misaki's living doll for a whole day. That night, the TV reported the results of the public vote from the first week of June. Aoi and Kanade were still in first and second place, while Shiri held third and Akane came in fourth. Hikari was confused about why her ranking hadn't gone up even though she had saved a cat. Akane then explained that there were no surveillance cameras where Hikari had rescued the cat. Misaki pointed out that Hikari had always been the type to help others and encouraged her by saying there would still be other chances. The following week, Akane once again drew the shopping chore. She was confused about why she kept ending up with it. Teru asked Aoi if he could be the one to draw the next assignment instead. Aoi told him he could only do that once he had grown a bit. Annoyed, Teru bumped his elbow into the cabinet. Shiri asked if he was okay, and Teru responded with a strange and hard-to-understand phrase to calm himself down. He then asked Akane to let him go shopping in her place. Shu wanted to know if Teru had a reason for that. Teru explained that he was doing it to protect something precious to him, and that in order to grow stronger, he needed to face trials. Shu loved that answer and gave him permission to take on the task. Shiri thought Teru was a bit reckless and was worried about him going shopping alone. She told him she would go with him. Teru replied that it was supposed to be his training and no one knew what kind of dangers might appear. Even so, Shiri insisted on going. Eventually, Teru agreed but told her not to stray too far from him. Watching the two of them leave, Akane started to feel guilty, thinking she had pushed them into doing it. Shu then suggested that she go with them too. At that moment, Akane asked Hikari for help. Not long after they left the house, Teru realized he had forgotten the shopping bag. He was flustered because problems kept popping up one after another. Just as he was about to ask Shiri to go back and get it, Shiri pulled out the bag she had brought along. They continued walking but were soon confronted by a barking dog. Teru shouted at the dog to quiet down, but it kept barking. Shiri then spoke to the dog using her special ability, telling it that she and Teru were just passing by and not troublemakers. The dog understood her and calmed down, having mistaken them for intruders earlier. Teru grabbed Shiri's hand and told her to run. Teru believed that without a strong will to become king, they could easily end up in danger. He also mentioned that what they just faced was nothing compared to his potential as a superhuman. Even though Teru had powers stronger than most adults, he wasn't allowed to use them carelessly. He had promised his mother to be careful because his abilities were incredibly strong and potentially dangerous. At that time, Hikari was following Akane. Not long after, Teru discovered them, but he didn't recognize them. He scolded them for tailing him. Shiri noticed what was happening and both Akane and Hikari quickly left, reminding Teru that he was supposed to be shopping. Teru then remembered that he was on an important mission to buy groceries. Teru and Shiri arrived at the supermarket. According to Teru, the journey there had been full of obstacles and the real adventure was just beginning. Shiri told Teru there wasn't a shopping list in their bag, but Teru was convinced that the two people who had followed them earlier must have taken it. Shiri used her ability to summon the shopping list, and it turned out it was in Teru's pocket the whole time. After buying everything on the list, they headed home. Teru proudly declared that the mission had been successfully completed. On their way back, they encountered a stray dog. Teru looked terrified. Shiri used her power and asked the dog to let them pass, and the dog replied by asking for food. Unfortunately, Shiri didn't have anything to give. As the dog seemed ready to attack Shiri, Teru immediately used his power to defend her. He called the dog a coward for trying to attack someone weaker than him. Although Teru had promised their mother that he wouldn't use his powers recklessly, he had made up his mind that if anyone ever tried to hurt Shiri, he would break that promise to protect her. The dog got scared and ran away. Teru made sure Shiri was okay and told her they should head home. At that moment, Shiri asked if they could hold hands on the way back. The next day after school, Hikari went over to her friend's house. She was still thinking about how to boost her popularity for the upcoming election. They watched a concert on TV by Sakten, a newly debuted idol who had already drawn a crowd of over 10,000 fans. Inspired by this, Hikari realized there might be a simple way to become more popular. Akane entered Hikari's room calling for borscht so she could feed him. Seeing Akane, Hikari quickly wrapped herself in a blanket. Akane said she wasn't sure what Hikari was planning but warned her not to take things too far. Hikari decided to stay quiet until she officially became an idol to prevent others from copying her idea. She read a book about how to become an idol and learned that she needed to go through an audition process. Since she was still in grade school, she would need a guardian to accompany her. Unfortunately, it would take another 2 years before she could audition on her own. Determined, Hikari came up with a plan to transform herself into a middle schooler so she could attend the audition independently. Feeling confident about her plan, she started looking for a costume, so she decided to search Misaki's wardrobe instead. While she was going through Misaki's closet, Haruka walked in and immediately questioned her. Hikari explained that she needed an outfit for an audition. She admitted that she wanted to become king, so she was thinking of ways to boost her popularity and wanted to try becoming an idol. Haruka agreed to keep her secret from the rest of the family, but told her that if she was serious, she needed to fully commit. Hikari managed to pass the audition without anyone in her family finding out. Haruka helped train her for the next round. It was true that she had lost sight of her original goal for a moment. There were always countless easy ways out, but what was the point of shortcuts when it's the struggles that make success meaningful? That day, Hikari went to her second audition with Haruka. Haruka reminded her that as members of the royal family, they might be treated differently, so they had to be careful to hide the truth. Hikari owed her friend Shika a big thanks. Shika had let Hikari use her name to apply for the audition. Shika was thrilled to have a friend aiming to become an idol. Haruka encouraged Hikari to show off her amazing charm, reminding her that once her true identity was revealed, it would be hard to go back. Hikari stepped into the studio, and the staff asked for her ID card or student ID. Hikari handed over her elementary school student ID only to realize that it displayed her real name. The audition staff didn't recognize her as a member of the royal family, but the real issue was the fact that it was an elementary school ID. The staff mentioned that Hikari looked older than expected, and they suspected that there might have been a mistake during the photo review process. The audition panel apologized, explaining that they weren't recruiting grade school students at the time. Hikari left the studio and told Haruka what happened. Technically, Haruka could have posed as her guardian to help her apply for an audition specifically for grade school students, but he chose not to mention that option. Instead, Haruka suggested they go home and told her that even in the face of failure, there's always a light shining through. While Haruka went to the restroom, Hikari waited for him at the park. Not long after, a man approached her. He introduced himself as Kuji and said he worked in production. He asked if Hikari was interested in becoming an idol. Hikari excitedly said that she was. Kauji studied her face and said she had a positive aura. Intrigued, Hikari decided to go with Kauji to his studio. When Haruka returned from the restroom, he noticed that Hikari was no longer there. At Kauji's studio, Hikari showed off her talent. Kauji's superior even praised him for discovering someone as promising as Hikari. Soon after, Sakshin appeared. Hikari recognized her immediately and told her that she wanted to become an idol just like her. Kauji asked Hikari if she was truly serious about becoming an idol. Hikari responded with enthusiasm. Kauji then said he needed to speak with her guardian and asked her to contact them. But it turned out that Hikari's phone was still with Haruka. Earlier during the first audition, Hikari had given her phone to Haruka so it wouldn't distract her. Kauji then asked her to give him her home phone number, but she couldn't remember it, so he suggested going straight to her house. Hikari agreed and even invited Sakshin to come along, though Sakshin declined because she had a recording session that day. As they were leaving the studio, Haruka saw Hikari. She told him that she had just been scouted by an agency. Haruka reminded her that she shouldn't go off with strangers. Kauji then asked for Hikari and Haruka's last name. Hikari answered truthfully and said she was from the Sakurada family. Kauji and his superior immediately went to apologize to Soichiro for not treating Hikari with proper respect. Kauji explained that he saw a natural idol aura in Hikari and sincerely asked for Soichiro's permission to let her become an idol. Soichiro agreed. Hikari was overjoyed and proudly said her father was amazing. Hikari made her debut under the stage name Sakuraba Light. She hid her true identity and presented herself as a middle school student. Kanade found it curious. Most people try to look younger, but it was rare for someone to try to appear older. Akane liked the outfit Hikari wore during her debut. Haruka found it a bit odd. Hikari had said she wanted to raise her ranking in the upcoming election, but hiding her identity would make that effort meaningless in his eyes. At night, Akane felt like she was experiencing sleep paralysis. It turned out that Borscht had climbed onto her bed asking for food. Akane woke up wondering why Borscht always woke her like that. When she checked Borsch's feeding bowl, she found some leftovers from earlier that day. Akane asked Borscht to eat the leftover food so it wouldn't go to waste. However, Borscht kept biting the plastic instead. Akane then poured cat snacks until the bowl was full, but Borscht continued chewing on the plastic. The next morning, Akane asked Shiri to find out why Borscht was biting the plastic bags. Using her ability, Shiri tried to understand what Borscht wanted. It turned out that Borscht was very grateful they had taken him in when he was lost, but he was eagerly waiting to see what kind of food the royal family would give him. Unfortunately, Borscht was very disappointed, saying the food there was even worse than plastic. Finally, Akane understood what Borscht wanted. That morning, Akane was running late on her way to school, but luckily, she still made it to class on time. Karian greeted her and mentioned that Akane had always been diligent, and it was okay to be late once in a while. Akane said she actually aimed to have perfect attendance at school without any absences. Unexpectedly, Akane's classmates were shocked because she wasn't wearing a skirt that day. The classmates thought this was unusual, and in that unlikely situation, everyone started questioning their own normality. As a result, they all began doubting the reality they were experiencing. No one dared to say it out loud because they believed it was a form of social psychological reaction and a negative feedback loop. Yet, if they could live peacefully without thinking about it, that would also be a kind of happiness. Karian also wondered if this situation was really something worth showing off, but the problem was that it involved Akane. If Akane suddenly realized it, she might die from embarrassment. Karian was actually surprised that Akane hadn't noticed yet. She wondered if Akane did it on purpose, because if so, Akane's taste in clothes would definitely become the talk of the town. If Karian, as her best friend, had done that to her, Akane would probably be hurt and shocked. Karian was confused about what she should do. Seeing Karian deep in thought, Akane asked what was wrong and suggested Karian share if she had a problem. Karian was surprised that no one had talked about it and wondered if maybe everyone thought it wasn't strange at all. At the same time, two male students were talking about Akane not wearing a skirt. Hajime overheard this and asked if they were sure Akane wasn't wearing one. They weren't certain, but it was possible Akane was wearing a super mini skirt because they couldn't see clearly. So Hajime concluded that they hadn't confirmed what exactly was under Akane's skirt. This meant not only was it possible that Akane was wearing a skirt, but she could also be wearing nothing at all. Meanwhile, Kanade heard from a friend that there was a rumor Akane was walking around without a skirt. Kanade didn't immediately believe it, especially since Akane was easily embarrassed and wouldn't do something like that. Kanade wasn't worried either, confident that Akane could handle anything that happened. However, Kanade accidentally bumped into a wall, which was a sign that she actually was concerned about Akane. At the same time, Aoi also heard the rumor from two of her friends. Aoi quickly sent a message to Akane to confirm, but unfortunately, Akane had left her phone at home. At that time, there was an announcement from Kanade, the student council vice president, asking Akane to come to the student council room immediately. Akane was confused about why Kanade had to call her through the school's public address system. Karian, worried about Akane, offered to go with her. Akane said she felt fine when she was at school, but she didn't mind having Karian accompany her either. Hajime and the other students were watching Akane head to the student council room. Since that room was on the third floor of the south building and Akane's class was in the east building, she would have to use the stairs. Because of that, Hajime and a group of male students felt the urge to peek from below to check if Akane was wearing a skirt. As they walked through the school hallway, Akane mentioned that Karian had always been there to support her and jokingly said she would marry Karian someday. Just then, Karian glanced back and noticed a group of boys following them. Hejuni tried to remind them that what they were planning was wrong, but the others believed he was just holding back because he cared about Akane. Karian quickly realized that the boys had probably noticed that Akane wasn't wearing a skirt. She urged Akane to walk faster. Akane commented that a lot of people had been staring at her that day. Karian encouraged her to pick up the pace, wondering how Akane could still not realize what was going on even while walking in front of a crowd. She was sure the situation could seriously affect Akane's mental well-being. Karian blamed herself for ignoring what Akane was going through and planned to scatter the group of boys and explain everything to Akane in private. Before she could do that, though, Akane and Karian ran into Kanade. Kanade was shocked to see Akane and immediately asked why she wasn't wearing a skirt. Karian was stunned by how blunt Kanade was. Kanade insisted she was wearing something, but Karian wasn't so sure. At that moment, it really did look like Akane didn't have a skirt on. Akane finally realized that might be the reason so many people had been staring at her. She explained that on her way to school, she tried to avoid the surveillance cameras, but her skirt got torn on a tree branch, so she changed into shorts. She said there was no way she would go to school without wearing anything at all. To prove her point, Akane lifted her uniform to show that she was wearing shorts, but it turned out she was only wearing underwear. Everyone around her reacted in excitement, and Akane let out a hysterical scream the moment she realized what had happened. The next day, the students gathered in the school auditorium to hear an announcement from the student council vice president. No one had ever actually seen the student council president, and their duties were often handled by Kanade. There were even rumors that the president was a first-year student because of their short stature. Kanade shared an announcement with the students. Next week, the whole school would take part in a citywide cleanup campaign. She encouraged everyone to work together to help make the city beautiful. Akane and Hajime were walking through the school hallway carrying assignment books. Akane admitted she lost her motivation when she heard about the cleanup event. Hajime asked if they could request to be assigned somewhere near the school. Akane didn't want to seem selfish. After all, everyone would be happy to see the city clean, but she couldn't help but worry about how many people would be looking at her face. Hajime found himself mesmerized by how shy Akane looked. Suddenly, Takeda approached Hajime to talk about the morning assembly. Hajime handed the books he was carrying to Akane and went off to speak with Takeda. Akane was curious. Takeda was actually Hajime's senior, that he spoke to Hajime so politely and had even addressed him as president. That made Akane wonder who Hajime really was. Meanwhile, Hajime and the others gathered in the preparation room. He scolded Takeda for calling him president in front of others, and Takeda quickly apologized. Hajime said Akane seemed confused lately, probably because of Kanade's city cleanup idea. His friend suggested speaking up about it to the student council, but Hajime told them not to. He believed that making a fuss might end up backfiring on them. Instead, he said he would take care of it himself. Hajime went to see Kanade in her classroom. Kanade's classmates assumed Hajime was there to confess his feelings. Yuji then told Shu that someone might be planning to confess to Shu's twin sister. Shu watched to see who Kanade was talking to and referred to Hajime as president. Yuji was confused by Shu's words, but Shu told him not to worry about it, saying it was nothing. Yuji complained that the city cleanup event sounded boring and asked Shu to try convincing his sister to drop out of it. Shu figured that if Hajime was talking to Kanade, it must be related to Akane. Hajime approached Kanade to discuss the cleanup event. Kanade asked if Hajime wanted her to change the location to somewhere near the school, but she refused to do so because Akane still owed her 40 million yen. Kanade wondered why Hajime wasn't happy about the event, since it would give him the chance to enjoy watching Akane being embarrassed. At that moment, Akane tried sneaking into Kanade's classroom quietly, but she got caught by Hitami, who immediately called her friends over. Soon, Akane was surrounded by Hana and the others, curious about what she was up to. Akane had no way of escaping her upperclassmen. Shu then called out to Kanade and asked her what she and Hajime had been talking about. Kanade, messing around, teased that Hajime had asked Akane to marry him. Hearing that, Shu immediately got upset and strongly rejected the idea. However, he clarified that it didn't mean he disliked Hajime, he just had other concerns. Kanade admitted she was just joking and that they had only talked about the upcoming morning assembly. Once he heard that, Shu quickly walked away. Yuji asked if Shu had managed to convince Kanade, and Shu replied that everything was fine now, assuming the topic was really about Akane. Yuji praised him for successfully persuading his sister. Meanwhile, Aoi's classmate Uzuki looked like she had caught a cold. Aoi gave her a tissue and told her not to push herself too hard. Not long after, one of Aoi's classmates came in and said a first-year student was looking for her. It turned out to be Hajime. Hajime admitted that he really wanted to see Akane when she was flustered, and he asked whether it was okay or not for someone in his position, both as a person and as the club president, to act based on personal feelings. Seeing how anxious Hajime looked, Aoi wondered if he had come to her for some kind of motivation. Aoi told him that wanting to see different sides of someone you like was pretty normal. Besides, even if Akane didn't enjoy it, she was still making an effort. As long as Akane was willing to go through with it, Aoi believed she should do it, and maybe she could even benefit from the experience. Hajime agreed and said he understood what decision he had to make. He thanked her and left. Aoi commented to herself on how strong Hajime's desire really was. Not long after, Akane came to visit Aoi's classroom, which surprised Aoi because Akane rarely came by. Akane asked if Aoi knew the student council president, and Aoi said he was in the same class as her. Hearing that the president was a third-year student, Akane felt relieved. She then asked Aoi to help her escape from Hana and the others. But before she could get away, Hana and her friends found her again. Back in the prep room, Hajime made his decision. He announced that he fully supported the club members participating in the city cleanup event. He said their group existed to honor Akane's wishes and take action for her sake. That was the whole purpose of the Akane fan club and his role as its president. Takeda thought their job was to make Princess Akane's life a little more peaceful, even if the environment around her was unpredictable. Hajime said that refusing to join the event would mean ignoring Akane's choice to face the challenge on her own. Another member commented that suddenly making her face the townspeople head-on felt like a really tough challenge. Hajime didn't care about that. He believed that if the obstacle was easy, it wouldn't mean anything. And if it was impossible to overcome, then it wouldn't be any different from other difficulties Akane had faced. Takeda suggested maybe they should start with something easier. Hajime replied that if they did that, they wouldn't get to see Akane's embarrassed expression. At that moment, Akane was exhausted after finally escaping her upperclassmen. She gave up on looking for Hajime, only to find him standing right in front of her. Hajime thanked Akane for helping carry their classmates' notebooks. Akane was still unsure if there were any other student council presidents at school. The next day was the city cleanup event, which involved all students. That day, Uzuki was feeling better after being sick. She apologized to Kanade for making her take care of all her responsibilities. Around the same time, Yuji was upset with Shu, even though Shu said he had successfully persuaded Kanade. Shu didn't quite understand what Yuji was talking about and asked him not to blame him for it. Then, Hajime told their friends that in order to protect Akane's honor, their class should collect as much trash as possible. He also reminded everyone to keep an eye on Akane throughout the day. Akane hadn't expected Hajime to be that enthusiastic about it. Later that afternoon, Akane was exhausted and laid down on the couch at home. Kanade told her not to slack off. Akane replied that it was Kanade's fault, explaining that she was mentally drained from being constantly watched by so many people. Not long after that, Borscht climbed onto Akane as she was lying down. Shu mentioned that it was rare to see Borscht lie down on anyone else's body besides Akane's. Akane said it was probably because she was the one who often fed him. Apparently, what Borscht really liked was the firm yet slightly soft and warm sensation from Akane's chest, which reminded him of where he used to live. Shu guessed that maybe Borscht just liked flat, soft surfaces to sleep on. Hikari chimed in, saying hers also felt firm and soft. She invited Borscht to climb onto her, but Borscht wasn't interested. Shu joked that maybe Akane's chest was flatter and softer. Curious, Akane checked Hikari's chest herself, wondering what growing up felt like for a girl. Suddenly, Aoi announced that dinner for the evening was Borscht. The cat, Borscht, misunderstood and believed his time had come. Thinking he had gotten fat enough to be cooked, he prepared to fight for his life and ran away in panic. Shiri said he had misunderstood. It turned out that Aoi was just referring to the soup she was making. After realizing the truth, Borscht returned in time for dinner. That day, the Sakurada siblings went to the beach together. Hikari and Misaki were playing beach volleyball while Shiri, Taru, and Aoi were busy collecting seashells. Kanade and Haruka were relaxing under the sun. Haruka, the second son of the Sakurada family, was 14 years old. Just like the rest of his siblings, Haruka had a special ability too. The beach they visited was actually the Sakurada family's private beach. Akane was surprised to learn that their family even owned one. Shu explained that the private beach had been their father's idea, so they could have fun without worrying about other people. Akane had not even known where the island was, but luckily, they got there easily using Shu's teleporter. Soon after, Hikari invited everyone to play a watermelon splitting game. Haruka used his ability to calculate each person's chance of successfully splitting the watermelon. Teru had an 8% chance, Hikari 2%, Misaki 5%, Shu 1%, Akane 10%, Aoi 1%, and Shiri had the highest at 80%. Haruka's ability was called Lots of Next. Kanade walked over to Haruka and asked what he was predicting. Haruka told her he was calculating their chances at the game, and that Kanade's probability was 50%. Kanade was surprised when she heard Shiri's was 80%. She asked Haruka if that meant it was not guaranteed. Right then, Teru took his turn, and sure enough, he failed. Hikari went next but missed the watermelon completely. Still, she looked cheerful. Seeing that, Shu said that Hikari did not have to force herself to act like an idol. Misaki's turn came next, but she ended up accidentally throwing the stick toward where Haruka was sitting. When it was Akane's turn, Hikari, Teru, and Misaki tried giving her directions, but they only confused her, and she ended up missing as well. Shu's swing came really close but still missed. Aoi also failed, just like the others. Then came Kanade's turn. She suspected that everyone was failing on purpose just to make Shiri happy. Still, she did not want Haruka's prediction to come true. Haruka noticed a tense aura building around her. Kanade walked up confidently, ignoring the voices around her giving directions. Her odds were pretty good at 50%, but Shiri still had the highest chance. Haruka thought that logically, Shiri should be the one to split it. Kanade positioned herself at the perfect distance, and her hit landed right on the watermelon. But to everyone's surprise, it did not split. Finally, it was Shiri's turn. If she failed, they would have to start over again from Taru. As she stepped forward, everyone began cheering her on. Haruka also hoped Shiri could do it, but he remembered that even Kanade's strong hit had not been enough. Then something strange happened. Shiri heard the watermelon speak. It claimed it was tougher than most and did not believe she could split it. Shiri suddenly felt sorry for the watermelon. She believed it must hurt whenever someone tried to hit it. She apologized and admitted she could not do it. The watermelon was touched by her kindness. No one had ever said something nice to it before. It told Shiri it did not mind if she tried. In fact, it asked her to hit it as hard as she could, so she could enjoy the moment. Shuri said again that she could not, but the watermelon gently insisted. It wanted her to have fun and said goodbye, saying it was happy to have met her. Shuri gently tapped the watermelon. Haruka was shocked. Kanade said that kind of hit would never work. But then, the watermelon split perfectly clean. Shuri picked up a slice of watermelon and greeted it. But Watermelon said it had no regrets about living its life as a watermelon. After they finished enjoying the fruit, they decided to play volleyball. Shu reminded Akane that having fun was fine, but she should not go overboard. Akane was actually curious about something she saw in the distance, but Shu told her not to pay attention to it. At that moment, the volleyball bounced far away and Hikari asked Akane to go get it. Akane ran off and Shu tried to stop her, but she kept going until she crashed into a wall. Everyone was shocked. Apparently, Haruka had already calculated that there was a 90% chance Akane would hit the boundary wall. Akane, confused, asked about the wall. Shu explained that it was not a southern island at all, but rather an artificial beach built on a vacant lot. Hikari, Misaki, and Teru were all stunned. Misaki asked if Shu had intentionally tricked them. Shu explained that if they all went to a real beach together, it would have been a nightmare for the security team. Hikari, annoyed, told Shu that if he was going to trick them, he should have done a better job. Shu tried to calm them down, assuring them that the sand and the water were real. Hikari then realized he was telling the truth. Akane said that Shu did not need to keep it a secret. As long as they could all have fun, the fact that it was fake did not matter. Shu apologized, saying all he wanted was for his siblings to enjoy themselves. Akane admitted she had a good time. Right then, Hikari, Misaki, and Teru began hitting the boundary wall out of curiosity. It turned out the wall was quite sturdy, like the kind used in TV sets. Not long after, the wall collapsed, revealing that the beach was actually just a setup on a vacant lot next to a road. Passers-by were shocked to see them standing there in swimwear. Akane was mortified when Hajime and Takeda saw her and she screamed in panic. That night, Akane entered Haruka's room and was shocked to see a photo of herself in a bikini had ended up online. Haruka initially thought the girl in the background of the picture was Misaki, but then realized it was Akane. They both yelled out in surprise. Haruka asked when Akane had gotten behind him. Akane said she had just entered his room. Haruka asked if she had seen the photo, and Akane admitted that maybe she had mistaken it for something else. Haruka asked if she had knocked before coming in. He expressed that he did not like it when people entered his room without permission. Feeling guilty, Akane quickly apologized. She asked Haruka not to make excuses. Haruka then tried to explain the photo. He said it was actually a picture of Akane's lookalike, but Akane did not believe him. She was confused about why Haruka had not told her. From her point of view, if someone was talking about who saw the photo, it meant that person might be using it inappropriately, which she found unacceptable, especially from a sibling. Haruka reassured her that such a thing would never happen. Akane was taken aback and told Haruka to stop reading her mind. Akane pressed him about what the photo really meant and why he had kept it from her. She threatened to call Misaki to tell her everything, but Haruka quickly stopped her. He admitted that he could not tell anyone about it, but he also thought it was not something Akane needed to worry about. He asked her to forget what happened. Still feeling upset, Akane warned him again that she would call Misaki. Haruka started to panic, realizing it could be a big problem if Misaki found out. He considered that maybe it would be better if he explained everything himself. Just then, Misaki suddenly entered Haruka's room, catching him off guard. Haruka explained the photo to Akane. He said that since Akane rarely goes online, she might not know about one of the fan websites dedicated to the Sakurada family. On that site, there were several photos of Akane, and Haruka admitted he had already asked for Akane's pictures to be taken down. He went on to explain that the fan site was created by people who were genuinely enthusiastic about the Sakurada family. Most of them used images taken from TV, uploaded them, and spent time chatting about Akane. The site was considered a form of entertainment by the state, so it was tolerated. However, Haruka figured Akane wouldn't like it because it was embarrassing, so he decided to keep it a secret from her. Akane asked what the fans were saying about her. Haruka replied that they were talking about how cute she was and how they admired both her visible traits and the ones that weren't so obvious. Hearing that, Akane felt like she could never step outside the house again. The next day at school, Misaki was checking her schedule. Her activities for the day included dodgeball club, futsal club, cooking club, tea ceremony club, assistant for the drama club, shoji club, and modeling for the art club. Misaki mentioned that even though it was summer break, her clones were still full of energy. Misaki, who is Haruka's twin sister, has the All-for-One ability, which allows her to create 7 identical clones of herself. She made her clones carry out the day's packed schedule. Meanwhile, Misaki's task for the day was an interview for the school newspaper, focusing on the girls in the Sakurada family. Aoi had originally asked Misaki to take her place because she was busy with student council duties that day. Kanade also wasn't available and apologized for the trouble, and Akane had flat-out refused and begged Misaki to understand. Misaki's clone in the tennis club was named Yuniko, and she had a short temper. The one in the drama club was called Levi, who was jealous by nature. Inari, who joined the Shoujo club, was known for being greedy. Bubu in the cooking club had an insatiable appetite. Belle, the one who modeled for the art club, was lazy. Shora in the tea ceremony club had an overly flirtatious personality. And Leo, who played futsal, was arrogant. At that moment, Misaki was being interviewed. She shared that Aoi and Kanade were both reliable at home, while Akane always seemed to be glowing whenever she was there because she felt truly comfortable at home. The interviewer then asked if Misaki's older sisters were amazing people. Before she could answer, all of her clones suddenly appeared and announced they had finished their club activities. They barged in, creating a loud commotion. These clones represented different sides of Misaki's personality and had unique skills. They were often asked to help with various club activities. During the interview, they began interfering, saying the interviewer's question lacked depth. After the interview was finally over, Misaki found Haruka in the library and said she wanted to go home early. Haruka told her to go ahead since he was still reading. Misaki teased him, saying he didn't need to act shy. She knew he had been waiting for her. Then she grabbed his arm and said she had already done a lot that day. Someone from the cooking club mentioned that Bubu had eaten so much again and hoped Misaki could help next time too. Her teammates in the tennis club also thanked her, saying that thanks to Yuniko, they had been able to make a comeback and score 3 points. They also asked if they could borrow Yuniko again in the future. Misaki told them that Yuniko would be free next week, so they could use her as much as they wanted. They called Misaki something like a clone manager. Her friends in the futsal club praised Leo for having a great kick, and Misaki felt genuinely happy she could help. Almost every club had asked for her assistance. Misaki admitted that she was willing to help all the clubs since she had no other responsibilities. One of her futsal club mates mentioned that Misaki's older sister was well known for her achievements back in middle school, proving that the Sakurada family could always be relied on. That same friend even said the future of the school clubs rested on Misaki's shoulders. But Haruka thought it wasn't just the future of the school clubs, the whole country's future rested on her as well. Later that day, when Misaki and Haruka got home, Akane told them that Shetoe was coming over and asked for Misaki's help again since Aoi and Kanade had returned yet. Misaki agreed without complaint, but when she got to her room, she was surprised to find out she had to go through another interview. She didn't think there was anything she could do except answer questions, and that frustrated her. She felt they were pushing too much onto her. Haruka noticed how suddenly Misaki's mood had shifted. He asked if she wanted him to walk her home. Misaki responded that he was supposed to go home with her anyway. Deep down, Misaki was upset because people always praised her older sisters, and the only thing they ever seemed to admire about her was her clones. She asked Haruka if everyone was just being selfish. She got even more annoyed when Haruka didn't respond. The truth was, Haruka also thought people were being selfish toward Misaki. Since he wasn't really listening, Misaki called out her clones to vent. Haruka was stunned that she actually did that. The clones started showing up, and instead of listening, they began trying to invite each other to play. Misaki had to tell them to stop messing around. She had called them for a serious reason. That's when she realized Bubu was missing. It turned out Bubu was snacking with Shiri. Misaki told everyone to sit still and listen, since she had called them to open up about her feelings. But Leo thought it was pointless for Misaki to talk to herself, and Levi believed her problems probably weren't that important anyway. Shora told Misaki to just focus on what made her happy. That really pushed Misaki over the edge. Yumiko and Bubu tried to calm her down, but Misaki felt even more frustrated. Everyone seemed to rely only on her 7 clones, not on her as a person. She felt like a burden to the very clones she had created. Akane called out to let Misaki know that Shetoe had arrived, but Misaki refused to come down. Akane was confused by her sudden rebellion. Misaki insisted that Akane do the interview instead. Then Shora told Akane to go downstairs with her, saying she would take Misaki's place for the interview. At that moment, Misaki realized she was just a manager of her own clones. She believed what she did was below average. A small part of her invited her older sisters, and even her clones. But the clones reminded her that only she had the power to create versions of herself like that. Yuniko made her realize that all the clones were actually parts of who she was. Haruka told her it was perfectly okay to be ordinary. He said he was surrounded by weirdos anyway, and in his eyes, Misaki was amazing. If she ever stopped being herself, that would be the real problem. A moment later, Akane returned with Shora, who had apparently given an inappropriate answer during the interview. Akane said only Misaki could answer questions properly and connect with others so easily. Then Shura hugged Haruka and asked him to cheer her up because Akane had just scolded her. Misaki stood up and said that without her, none of them could function. She dismissed her clones and finally went to meet Shitoe. Haruka watched her go and thought that she wouldn't be able to do much without him. After all, he had calculated a 100% chance that Misaki would go back to being her usual self. But in all the rush, Misaki had forgotten about Belle, who was still curled up under the blanket. Haruka called out to Belle, telling her to go downstairs and catch up with Misaki. Summer came to an end, and with only 6 months left until the royal election, things started to shift. That night, Akane told Aoi that she wanted to become the next king and live peacefully. Although she had made that decision, she had not done any campaigning at all. During that time, Akane often became the center of attention due to her own clumsiness and her overwhelming shyness. Wanting to change, she decided to start campaigning. It was her first time speaking in front of a crowd. Akane's fans cheered her on enthusiastically, but their support made her so nervous that she accidentally dropped her mic. Her campaign was broadcast on television. Misaki and Hikari were surprised by how suddenly Akane had managed to start campaigning. Haruka guessed that maybe Akane was shaken up after a clip of her was uploaded online. Akane admitted that she would keep trying, and once she became king, she planned to tighten internet regulations. Meanwhile, Teru showed off a campaign brochure he had made featuring the slogan, "Eradicate evil to its roots and guide the world to the end of days." Kanade questioned why Teru had chosen a phrase like that. Teru asked if the line was not cool enough, yet thought it sounded impressive. Surprisingly, Shu actually liked the slogan. All the Sakurada siblings had something to do that week, except for Misaki, who had no idea what she should be doing. Later, in her room, Misaki gathered her clones for a meeting. Yunigo asked if it was really okay for them to do nothing while everyone else was working hard on their campaigns. Leo suggested that all they could really do was help out at school. Shura expressed a desire for enthusiastic cheers like Hikaru received as an idol. Inari proposed that Misaki and her clones become idols too. Belle thought that idea sounded like way too much trouble, and Levi doubted Misaki even had a shot at winning the election. So Misaki asked Haruka if he had any suggestions. Haruka was confused about why she was asking him, and even more confused about why he had to attend a strategy meeting with Misaki and her clones in the first place. He wondered what the point of the whole meeting was. Misaki explained that the meeting was to figure out her campaign strategy. Haruka then noted that Misaki finally seemed interested in becoming king. Misaki admitted she felt like all of their siblings were acting on their own whims. Akane only wanted to be king so she could get rid of all the security cameras and live in peace. Hikaru just wanted to become an idol because she liked being pampered. If Aoi had no intention of becoming king, Misaki thought she should make that clear. And honestly, Misaki had no idea why Kanade wanted to become king at all. The next day, Kanade was playing tennis at school when she noticed Shu standing quietly. Her mind wandered back to a memory from 12 years ago when they were kids. Back then, Kanade had asked Akane to come play outside with her, but Shu told them not to go because they had to watch the house. Kanade insisted that everything would be fine if Shu came with them, but Shu asked if she even understood what it meant to watch the house. Kanade, annoyed, told him not to act all high and mighty just because he was the older brother, especially since he had only been born half an hour before her. Ignoring him, Kanade took Akane outside to play. In the end, Shu gave in and decided to watch over them while they played. After a while, Shu asked them to head home, but Kanade wanted to play a little longer. When Akane said she wanted to go back, Kanade stopped her and gave her the Rose Typhoon gear. Shu reminded Kanade that if she kept using her powers like that, she would burn through her New Year's money and her account would be drained every time she activated her ability. After putting on the Rose Typhoon, Akane got excited and wanted to show it to their mom, but Kanade stopped her again and offered her something even cooler. She created a giant castle, and Akane immediately wanted to go inside. Unfortunately, the door was built way too high. Kanade had already maxed out her account and could not use her powers anymore to fix it. Shu tried to help Akane get in by teleporting her, but Kanade stopped him, saying she would just make a staircase. However, right as she was working on the stairs, the castle pillars suddenly vanished. The whole structure collapsed and the rubble came crashing down on both Akane and Shu. Kanade felt incredibly guilty when she saw Akane and Shu unconscious. Ever since that incident, Shu had suffered a leg injury and could no longer take part in any strenuous sports. Back when he was a kid, Shu had always dreamed of becoming a soccer player. Kanade admitted that it was all because of her stubbornness, and she could not even heal Shu's leg with her own powers. That was why she wanted to become king, to use the nation's resources for medical research and find a way to heal Shu's leg. Otherwise, she would never be able to forgive herself. That weekend, as usual, Akane drew the short straw and ended up with grocery shopping duty again. She was confused as to why it kept happening and started to suspect it might be rigged. Eventually, she realized that maybe this was a challenge she needed to face in order to become king, and she decided to overcome it. Misaki asked Shu if he was preparing anything for the election, and he admitted that he still had not found a reason to become king. That day, Misaki and Haruka went out together. Misaki was still thinking that she had to win the election. While they were out, they saw Hikari, who had taken on the role of police chief for the day. Haruka commented on how well Hikari handled her new responsibility. Meanwhile, Teru was giving a speech in front of a crowd, though he was still being assisted by Shiri. Watching that, Haruka laughed and said it was hard to tell who was actually doing the talking. At the same time, Kanade was attending an event where she was given an award for her work as a special advisor to a sports foundation that had been promoting youth health since spring. Haruka realized then that Kanade was truly serious about preparing for the upcoming election. Misaki held another meeting and Yumiko was still questioning why Misaki and the clones were doing nothing while everyone else was busy preparing for the election. The clones tossed around ideas. Maybe they should become idols instead, or maybe there was no rush since Misaki herself had not done anything yet. Misaki insisted she was not in a hurry, but they were running a campaign for themselves. What she did not like was their attitude, which showed no real concern for the people. Haruka was confused by those words coming from someone who had not done anything either. His comments stung a little, and he apologized. Misaki wondered why Haruka was taking their older sister's side. According to Haruka, even if Misaki said the country came first, she could not be a real leader if it meant completely sacrificing herself. He explained that their sisters were not ignoring the country, they were just trying their own way, and it was up to the people to decide if it was right or not. So Misaki did not need to take issue with that. Misaki argued that a king was supposed to rule the nation, so obviously, the one who became king should be someone who prioritized the country above all else. Haruka asked if Misaki could truly do that. She answered confidently that she could, but Belle called her out and said that was not true. Belle believed that Misaki was just unhappy that Haruka kept siding with her older sisters and that deep down, she did not really have a strong sense of justice. She was just jealous. Shora chimed in, saying what Misaki really wanted was for Haruka to acknowledge her as the best. In reality, she was no different from the rest of their older sisters. Misaki had just realized that her reason for wanting to become king was just as selfish as theirs. Haruka believed that Misaki already had what it took to be king because she cared about others and was not fighting for herself, but for those around her. He reminded her that no matter what her reason was, she had to fight for it. Misaki finally understood and promised to give her best in the election. She also asked Haruka to help her, and he agreed. Haruka encouraged Misaki and the clones to give it their all. Haruka realized that everyone changes little by little. They start thinking about things they never considered before and doing things they couldn't do in the past. He suspected that their father might have nominated all of his children for the election so that before they entered society, they could reflect on themselves and improve. Bubu looked excited just from hearing that pudding was coming, and sure enough, Shu came home bringing pudding. The next day, Kanade spent time playing with the kids at a kindergarten. She joined in all the games they played there. At one point, a little kid was drawing something and Kanade asked if the drawing was of the kid's mother. But it turned out the child had drawn Aoi and said they would vote for Aoi in the upcoming election. That made Haruka realize that Aoi's popularity couldn't be underestimated, even children adored her. When he got home, he saw Akane collapse on the sofa, clearly exhausted. Aoi explained that Akane had been very enthusiastic about her campaign lately. Apparently, Aoi and Shu had been supporting her earlier, with Shu helping Akane teleport, and Aoi genuinely hoped that all her effort would boost how people saw her because she knew just how hard Akane was working. That night, Kanade visited Aoi's room and asked her if she had ever truly wanted to become the king. Aoi was surprised by this sudden question. Kanade thought it would be better if Aoi focused on supporting Akane, which would also help her avoid becoming king. Although Aoi had indeed been helping Akane, that didn't mean she had no interest in the throne. If she acted like that, it would seem as though she was just using Akane. Kanade then suggested that Aoi talk to their father and asked to withdraw from the election. And if Aoi didn't have the courage to bring it up, Kanade was willing to go in her place. She mentioned how their father tended to say a lot of things but was ultimately soft when it came to his kids. Still, Aoi said she couldn't just drop out like that. Kanade asked if it was because she felt responsible, and hearing that, Aoi was surprised by Kanade's sudden shift in tone. Kanade admitted she was curious about Aoi's abilities. Her perfect knowledge came from her power called invisible work. Whatever Aoi learned, she could remember forever. Her test scores were flawless. She had memorized the entire legal code of their country, and she never forgot anyone she had met. Kanade thought that was just Aoi's natural strength. Aoi was once again taken aback by how cheeky Kanade had become, still wondering why Kanade was suddenly bringing all this up. Kanade believed that if Akane used her full potential, she could completely turn the situation around. Aoi asked her not to worry and said she was sure Kanade's rankings would go up. Kanade hoped so too and soon left Aoi's room. Left alone, Aoi realized it was true. If she used her powers to their full extent, she could control any situation. But she didn't want to use her abilities for her own gain. The next day at school, Shizuru, Nanao, and Ozuki helped Aoi put up some posters. Nanao asked what the point was. Akane explained that if no one did it, the teachers would have a hard time. As Aoi and her three friends walked through the hallways, every student stared at them, awestruck by Aoi's presence. Shizuru was confused. After all, they were just putting up posters. Yet the students looked at them as if they were leading a parade. Nanao commented that back in grade school, when the four of them used to hang out, everyone would also stop and stare. There was once a woman who compared them to Momotaro, a character from Japanese folklore who was helped by a monkey, a dog, and a bird on his journey. If Aoi was Momotaro, Nanao joked that Uzuki would be the bird because she was the smallest. Shizuru said that would make Nanao the monkey, but Nanao refused. Hearing that, Aoi offered to be the monkey instead. Right after that, Nanao and Shizuru started fighting over who got to be Momotaro. That little moment reminded Aoi of something from middle school. Nanao had once told them about a puppy that licked her fingers. Shizuru, curious, asked how the puppy did that and wanted Nanao to show them. Of course, Nanao refused. But when Aoi asked, Nanao agreed without hesitation. And whenever Aoi asked the three of them for help, they always said yes without question. At that time, Aoi was puzzled as to why her friends would obey everything she asked them to do. Even on her way back to school, she still didn't understand it. When she happened to meet a man on the street, she asked him to stand on one hand and bark, and to her surprise, he actually did it. After a medical examination, it turned out that Aoi's ability wasn't perfect knowledge as she had thought, but rather something called absolute order, a power that compels anyone she commands to follow her instructions. Since she had no idea she possessed this power, she had been using it unconsciously. The medical team suspected that the effects of her commands would wear off relatively quickly. Even though the commands were absolute, the ability itself seemed to be incomplete. According to Soichiro, no matter what kind of power Aoi had, her beauty was truly unmatched. From that moment on, Aoi realized that her true ability was absolute order. Not long after, Uzuki, Nanao, and Shizuru showed up. Aoi invited them to have tea together. She wanted to treat them as a way to thank them for their help, but they refused. They agreed to join her only if they could split the bill because their help had been genuine. That, they said, was what real friendship meant. The four of them ended up enjoying pancakes together. Previously, Aoi had been worried that everyone only followed her because of her power. But it turned out that the three of them genuinely saw her as a friend. A short while later, they saw Akane walking home alone. As soon as Akane spotted Aoi, she rushed over and clung to her. Akane's friends praised her for becoming brave enough to go home by herself and even give speeches in public. They said they would fully support her. When they reached an intersection, Aoi and Akane parted ways with the others. Akane mentioned that Aoi had made some really good friends. Aoi, however, felt that maybe they had only become her friends because of her power. Akane then asked if Aoi thought Uzuki, Nanao, and Shizuru only wanted to be friends because she was from the royal family. But even if that was the reason at first, what truly mattered was that they were friends now. According to Akane, friendship wasn't about whether someone wanted to be friends or not. It was something that naturally formed. Aoi had met the three of them back in grade school. At the time, she had sincerely asked them to be her friends, and they had accepted right away. That day, Soichiro assigned several of his attendants to check the condition of every room in the house, starting from the living room, bathroom, and toilet, all the way to the attic and the basement. As a king, Soichiro constantly worried about his children's well-being. Before leaving, he instructed his staff to make sure every corner of the house was in good condition. At that moment, Kanade asked who those attendants really were. Soichiro explained that while royal duties were important, leaving his three daughters alone at home made him feel uneasy. Kanade reassured him that she, Akane, and Shiri would be just fine. Still, Soichiro remained concerned. Akane was still sick, and Shiri was just a little girl. Kanade believed she could take care of Akane and watch over Shiri, but Soichiro insisted that having more guards around the house would be safer in case something happened. Kanade was confident that no one would dare to break into a house full of superpowered people. However, not long after, Soichiro went as far as contacting the Royal Air Force Security Unit. Satsuki, his wife, was also surprised by how overly cautious her husband was. Before he left, Soichiro made Kanade promise not to create anything unusual, no matter what happened, because every time she did, money would automatically be deducted from her bank account. Kanade urged her father to just go already. Even after arriving at the airport, Soichiro kept calling his staff to double-check if everything was still fine at home. Satsuki reminded him not to worry so much, saying that Kanade, Akane, and Shiri would be okay. She believed Kanade had changed and had grown into someone reliable. Back at home, Kanade was chatting with Shiri in the living room. She said their father was going way overboard and worrying too much. Kanade planned to check on Akane, but she didn't want Shiri to come along because she was afraid the little girl might catch Akane's illness. So Kanade made her way to Akane's room, and on the way, she suddenly heard Akane screaming. It turned out Akane had screamed because a new character in the book she was reading had just died. Kanade was startled and quickly urged Akane to get some rest before her fever got worse. She checked Akane's temperature and realized her condition had gotten more serious, so she began preparing some medicine. Akane commented on how kind Kanade was being that day. Kanade said she was always kind. Akane told her she didn't have to act nice when outside the house. In her opinion, Kanade could easily win the election just by being herself. Kanade replied that beating Aoi wouldn't be possible unless she acted like a noble and pure-hearted person. Kanade then placed a cold compress on Akane's forehead and told her to get some sleep. When Kanade stepped out of the room, Shiri was already waiting to ask how Akane was doing. Kanade said that Akane had taken her medicine, was resting, and seemed to be feeling a bit better. Shiri was happy to hear that. Shiri then asked if Akane would get hungry when she woke up. Kanade suggested they cook something together while waiting. When the food was ready, Shiri had a taste and thought it was delicious. Kanade said once Akane ate their cooking, her fever would surely go away. After they finished cooking, Kanade went back to check Akane's temperature again and found that her fever had gotten even worse. She started to feel really worried seeing Akane suffer like that. She even thought about creating a medicine that could cure all illnesses. But then she remembered her father's warning, not to invent anything strange, or she would risk running out of money. Still, Kanade couldn't stop worrying about what might happen to Akane. Akane told her she was overreacting, that it was just a normal fever, and she would be fine with regular medicine and enough rest. Kanade was about to use her powers anyway, but Akane stopped her. She even threatened to force herself out of bed if Kanade went through with it. Kanade apologized and told Akane to get more sleep. Unexpectedly, Shiri had been listening from outside the room and came in after hearing the commotion. Seeing that, Kanade warned Shiri not to get too close to Akane because she might catch her illness. But Shiri didn't care. Instead, she gave Akane a gentle kiss on the cheek and said it was a healing spell to help her get better. Akane felt really happy, and Kanade asked where Shiri had learned something like that. Shiri said their mom and dad did it too. After that, Kanade and Shiri did house chores together, took a bath together, and then Kanade read Shiri a bedtime story. Once the story was over, Kanade told Shiri to go to sleep, but Shiri wanted to stay close to her a little longer. That night, Kanade let Shiri stay up late with her, and not long after, they heard a noise. Kanade quickly checked on Akane in her room but did not find her there, so she figured Akane must be in the bathroom. At that moment, Shiri hoped Kanade would be okay. Not long after, Akane showed up and came over to Shiri. Kanade still heard the strange noise and assumed it was Akane, so she followed the sound to find out where it came from. She opened her room and saw a man inside. Without thinking, she created an electric gun and zapped him right away. But it turned out to be Shu, who had just come back to grab something he left behind. Shortly after, members of the Air Force arrived to inspect the house, but they found no threat inside. One of the soldiers reported to Soichiro, and Soichiro got mad because they had forced their way into the house. Kanade then borrowed the communication device to speak to her father. She asked if he did not trust her. Soichiro could not deny it anymore, and Kanade said they would talk about it once he got home. After all that, Kanade felt exhausted and just wanted to sleep. That night, she went to Akane's room to sleep beside her, but Akane turned her down and asked her to stay with Shiri instead, saying she already felt better. But when Kanade asked Shiri to sleep together, Shiri said no and told her to stay with Akane instead. Kanade went back to Akane's room and told her that Shiri had kicked her out. She looked at Akane, who was already sound asleep, and felt that Akane really was doing better. She kissed Akane on the cheek once she saw that everything around them was safe. Then she went to Shiri's room and found her already asleep. Kanade knew Shiri would probably be mad if she saw her again. Just then, Shiri held Kanade's hand and called her Mom. While preparing for the election, Hikari worked as an idol under the stage name Sakuraba Light. She had even held a concert with a huge audience. At that time, Hikari was already quite popular as an idol. Koji told Sakshin that having a close rival might actually be a good thing for her. At school, Hikari scored 28 on a test, and her classmates asked if she was going to be alright with a score like that. They understood that she was busy because she was part of the royal family, but in reality, she had only been busy with idol work. Hikari told them she was fine and said she just had not gotten 90% serious about studying yet. The next day, she went to the studio to meet Koji. He asked how she was feeling after the concert. Hikari said she felt nauseous just from seeing him. That day, Koji wanted to review the concert with her. He said she definitely had talent, but she relied on it too much. He thought she needed to go through basic training. Hikari answered him while chewing on some chips, and Kuji told her to finish eating before talking. Kauji was not asking her to perform perfectly, but he said that an idol who is still growing is the best kind. He believed fans would support her because of the things she still needed to work on. Just then, Sakin came in. As soon as Hikari saw her, she completely ignored Kauji and greeted Sakin right away, but Sakin seemed a bit distant. Hikari thought maybe she was just feeling shy. While they were talking with Kauji, Hikari kept holding Sakin's hand. Kauji planned to hold a joint concert for both of them under the unit name Searchlight. The goal was to boost Hikari's popularity. Hikari was surprised she would be paired up with Sakin, and it looked like Sakin was not too happy about it. Kauji said Hikari would be the lead singer while Sakin would support her. The concert was going to be held for one full day, and they had it performed from day to night. Kauji asked if the two of them were ready. Sakin admitted that she would do her best, while Hikari was full of enthusiasm and said she was confident she could do it. Hikari was genuinely excited about performing together with Sakin. Sakin said she had watched a Sakuraba Light concert before, and in her opinion, Hikari's feelings had not reached the audience. To her, that made a poor performance. Sakin believed that performing on stage just to satisfy oneself was the same as disrespecting the fans. If Hikari was only becoming an idol half-heartedly, then honestly, that was very troubling to Sakin. Still, because this was a job, she agreed to perform at the concert. Hikari was shocked to hear Sakin say something like that. Sakin quickly left to go practice. What she said was actually the best thing for Hikari. No matter how much talent someone had, without real effort, they would not succeed. Sakin wanted to show the difference between her determination and Hikari's. Hikari felt really sad and said it seemed like Sakin hated her. Kauji told Hikari that Sakin had truly earned her success from the ground up. She had no special connections or extraordinary talent. She had come this far purely through hard work. Sakin also never neglected her schoolwork, which showed how serious she was about being an idol. Kuji wanted Hikari to put in the same level of effort and make sure not to fall behind Sakin. From that point on, Sakin stopped talking to Hikari. Even though they trained together, Sakin kept her distance and refused to get close to her. Hikari believed that if she gave her all, she could eventually connect with Sakin. That night, while Hikari was studying, Akane asked if she could come to the concert. Hikari said she could. Akane then asked Hikari to introduce her to Sakin, but Hikari refused and told Akane to do it herself. Hikari didn't want Akane to get close because she didn't want anyone to find out about her job. She wanted to give everything she had purely as herself. Because Hikari kept working hard at her studies, she scored a 96 on her exam. Her classmates praised her and said she was amazing. The day before the concert, Sakin was reminded to take a break, but she refused to rest because she hadn't yet perfected the choreography. She wanted to prove to Hikari that effort could surpass talent. The day of the Sakuraba Light and Sakin joint concert finally arrived. Right before the performance, Sakin told Hikari that the concert was meant to boost Hikari's popularity, so she wouldn't get in Hikari's way. Still, she said she wasn't singing for Hikari's sake. She was doing it for herself and for the fans who came to see them. She wanted to make the concert her own. Hikari said she would give it her all as well and invited Sakin to join her in pouring everything they had into making it the best concert ever. Sakin realized that Hikari might have misunderstood her and started to feel a bit foolish for how she had acted. That day, both Hikari and Sakin gave their absolute best during the concert. While they were taking a break, Kuji praised them both, saying their performance had been stunning and that it was the best concert ever. He asked them to keep that same energy for the evening show. At that moment, Sakin looked exhausted, but the show had to go on. They returned to the stage. Performing 2 concerts in one day was definitely tough for Sakin, and she found herself wondering how Hikari could still have so much energy. She guessed maybe it was talent, but more than that, it seemed like Hikari was just working incredibly hard. In other words, she was someone with talent who also put in a lot of effort. Sakin pushed herself to try to go even higher than Hikari. Unfortunately, during one of her jumps, she fell. She had twisted her ankle and needed medical attention. Hikari asked if Sakin was okay. Sakin said she was fine and that it was just a small issue. Kobuji told her not to perform anymore that day because it would be dangerous to continue, but Sakin insisted that she was okay. Still, Kuji refused. He was worried that her condition would get worse if she kept pushing herself. He told her that her fans would definitely understand how hard she had worked. Then Kuji asked Hikari to improvise and carry on the rest of the concert alone. Hikari was definitely surprised to hear that. It might have sounded unreasonable, but Kuji had put his hopes in her. She agreed without hesitation and quickly headed to the stage, greeting the audience with full energy. Meanwhile, Sakin was watching her from the monitor backstage. At one point, Hikari stumbled during a jump and fell, but she got up right away and playfully admitted that she had messed up. She continued performing with so much enthusiasm, even shouting Sakin's name and telling her how hyped the crowd was. After the concert, Sakin apologized to Hikari for saying harsh things to her earlier. She realized that she had been performing only to satisfy herself and had ended up disrespecting the audience. Hikari told her that wasn't true and admitted that she herself could be lazy sometimes. Sakin acknowledged that Hikari's performance had been amazing, but Hikari pointed out that she had fallen on stage. Sakin said that what really mattered was having fun. Hikari then explained that being an idol isn't about being perfect. Even when things aren't perfect, it's important to do your best, because fans want to see that effort. Sakin thanked her and admitted she had misjudged Hikari. A little shyly, she asked if they could be rivals and friends. Hearing that, Hikari was touched and gave her a big hug. Not long after, Koji showed up and said there was someone suspicious hanging around near the dressing room. He also mentioned that this person moved in an unusual way, as if gravity didn't apply to them and none of the staff could catch them. Hikari immediately suspected it was Akane. That day, autumn had finally arrived and Hana felt like she was dreaming as she walked home from school with Shu. She admitted she had sometimes wondered if Shu was just an illusion, and there were moments when she started feeling uneasy. Suddenly, Shu disappeared. That same day, Aoi went home from school with Nano, Uzuki, and Shizuru. She was wearing glasses and a mask because of her pollen allergy, and the others reminded her to be careful. Meanwhile, Akane was floating in the air, feeling puzzled as she watched Kanade keep creating small stones. It turned out Kanade was doing it simply because the pebbles were free. Haruka was busy predicting the weather. There was an 85% chance it would be sunny tomorrow, and about a 60% chance it would be cloudy the day after. At that time, Hikari was getting frustrated with Misaki's 7 clones, but Misaki couldn't return them just yet. Even Teru was doing his best not to break anything. Shiori said the table didn't like having hot food placed on it, and the chair felt tormented from being sat on all the time. Not long after, Aoi got home and saw that her siblings had lost control. Shu arrived and asked why everyone was acting that way, but then quickly teleported again. Satsuki told all of her children to go back to their rooms and said she would call them once dinner was ready. While in their room, Hikari asked Akane if things would be back to normal tomorrow. Akane said it was possible, since these kinds of breakouts usually lasted only a day. Hikari was relieved because she didn't have any plans for tomorrow. At that moment, Akane was still floating and even struggled to reach for her phone. She finally managed to open it and saw a message from Hana asking for help. Although she really didn't want to leave the house, Akane headed to the park, hoping nothing bad would happen. She wanted to meet Hana even though being alone with her made her nervous. Still, she knew she had to push past the anxiety, because if she stayed nervous every time she met Hana, she wouldn't be able to focus on the election activities. Before long, Hana showed up and apologized for being late. She asked if Akane had been waiting long. Akane said she had just arrived. However, because her powers were out of control, she opened a can of soda with too much force. Hana thought Akane was angry, but Akane reassured her that she wasn't and that it was just an accident. She explained that her powers were acting up because of a breakout, something unpredictable that caused her and her siblings to lose control of their abilities. Hearing that, Hana started to understand why Shu had suddenly vanished the day before. Akane guessed that maybe Shu had lost control of his teleportation. If the symptoms got worse, they might have to be quarantined until they recovered. That day, Akane said she was doing okay. She could still manage her powers as long as she stayed focused. But she had just started floating again because she lost focus. Hana apologized for reaching out at a time like that, but Akane said she really didn't mind. Hana asked if Akane could listen to her for a bit. The place she had in mind was kind of popular, so it was a little crowded. Akane told her it was no problem. She had already made up her mind to become the next ruler. Unfortunately, a girl soon walked up and greeted Akane, which made her so embarrassed that she quickly hid behind Hikari. She felt like she shouldn't let herself get scared in front of others. Akane admitted that Hana's message the day before had caught her off guard. Hana apologized, explaining that she didn't mean to send it. She hadn't even typed anything yet. She told Akane that Shu once said if there was something too hard to say, then maybe she should talk to Akane about it. Shu had even given her Akane's email address. Akane asked why Hana wanted to talk to her in particular. Hana replied that she had never talked to anyone else about Shu, not even her best friends. She felt that Akane was the most understanding person when it came to their situation. Akane then asked if Kanade was in the same class as Hana. Hana said yes, but she also admitted that Kanade seemed a little intimidating and had a kind of scary aura. She didn't feel comfortable telling anyone else about it because she lacked confidence. Someone like her walking next to someone like Shu felt wrong. She didn't think she deserved it, especially since Shu probably had a lot of female fans, and that could even affect his chances in the election. Actually, Akane thought only Hana liked Shu. Hana admitted that she didn't want to stand in Shu's way even though she had already confessed her feelings. Akane understood that it might be difficult for an ordinary person to get involved with a royal family. Suddenly, people nearby started gathering and staring at Akane. She felt very embarrassed and asked Hana if they hadn't arrived yet. Hana suggested they go to a cafe, but it turned out the cafe was very crowded and the only seats left were on the terrace. The cafe staff even offered them a place to sit if they were willing to wait. Akane declined because no matter what, she had to speak in front of many people later. She decided to go through with it anyway, thinking that eating while being watched by others was a kind of test for her. Hana and Akane talked while sitting on the cafe terrace. Hana understood the difficulties Akane was facing but admired how Akane wanted everyone to know her. Hana admitted that she was a closed-off person and couldn't impress others easily, but Shu really remembered her even though they hadn't met for years. Hana said she had been forgotten by her classmates last year, and that was why she liked Shu so much. Before long, people noticed Akane sitting on the terrace and immediately stared at her. Hana said it seemed unlikely it could stay there for long. Akane apologized even though Hana had gone out of her way to bring her out. Akane then said that's how it is being in the royal family. If Hana got involved with them, she would attract a lot of attention. So Hana would need a strong will if she wanted to marry Shu. Hana was shocked and said it was too early to talk about that since she wasn't even dating Shu yet. Hana's outburst caught the attention of nearby people, making her embarrassed and prompting her to urge Akane to eat the pastries quickly. At that moment, Akane lost control of her powers. Plates she touched shattered, the spoon she held broke, and even the chair she was sitting on cracked. Everyone stared at her, which scared Akane. Her clothes were also torn, but luckily Hana covered her with her own jacket. Hana said she would distract the others and told Akane to hide. Then Hana shouted to the crowd that she was in the same class as Shu and had just confessed her love to him recently. She said Shu would give her an answer after the election, and she also admitted she wanted to date and marry Shu. After that, Akane and Hana went home. Akane thanked Hana for saving her and apologized for making Hana buy clothes for her. Hana also apologized for being the one who invited Akane out in the first place. Akane confessed that she shouted her love with only half her heart and feared it might be the start of her downfall. According to Akane, half-hearted feelings weren't enough to make Hana do something like that. She encouraged Hana to be confident in expressing her feelings to Shu. Akane said she was entrusting Shu to her and Hana agreed. Akane mentioned that her foolish older brother never stopped talking about Hana at home. When they got home, Shu was watching a video of Hana's confession at the cafe earlier. Kanade asked if that was the best thing for Shu. Shu said it was the best if Hana didn't mind making that announcement, even though Kanade only wanted to know what Shu was thinking at the time. Hikari felt relieved that the outburst was over but was confused by Kanade's anger. Kanade got annoyed and pinched Hikari's cheek. When Soichiro first entered high school, many people opposed him. At that time, he hadn't made any friends or talked with classmates. His classmates seemed scared, hostile, and unimpressed with Soichiro. He realized that even if the people around him were different, he would always be labeled as part of the royal family. People kept their distance, especially because there was a maid who always looked after him. The maid's name was Takada, and she followed him everywhere, even to the restroom. Takada was very enthusiastic about her job and a trustworthy person to Soichiro. However, Soichiro thought that having someone constantly following him would prevent him from making friends. That was why he tried to escape from Takada. Soichiro had climbed out of a bathroom window 17 times already. That day, he left the bathroom and headed to the school rooftop for the first time. While there, he noticed a girl and moved closer to brush some flower petals off her face. The girl's name was Satsuki, and she was startled when Soichiro approached her face. She asked if he was planning to do something weird to her. Soichiro insisted he had no such intentions. Annoyed, Satsuki told him that if he felt guilty, he should come with her. She invited him to skip school and go shopping together. Satsuki mentioned that she planned to buy a lot of things that day and that Soichiro's presence would be a big help. Soichiro's ability allowed him to read the emotional aura of others, but he didn't sense anything from Satsuki's aura. He wondered if she was not afraid of him. Satsuki found it strange that Soichiro kept staring at her, but he said it was nothing. Soichiro was surprised by how many groceries Satsuki was buying, even joking that she must have a horse to carry it all. At that moment, the shopkeeper asked Satsuki if she had brought her boyfriend. She denied it, calling Soichiro her servant instead. The shopkeeper felt like Soichiro's dull face looked familiar. Soichiro accompanied Satsuki to her house, and she invited him inside. He asked if it was an inn, but she explained it was the main building. Meanwhile, Satsuki's siblings noticed her bringing a boy home. Even though they thought she had no interest in romance, her younger brother Kana was very friendly and offered Soichiro a drink, even inviting him to have dinner with them. Her younger sister, who helped with cooking, was curious if Soichiro was Satsuki's boyfriend, but Satsuki denied it. Soichiro noticed the colors of her siblings' auras. They were full of curiosity, interest, and hope as they asked how he had grown so tall. He explained that growing big was just a matter of eating well and getting enough sleep. They all had dinner together. It turned out their parents worked late, so Satsuki and her siblings cooked dinner together. Soichiro complimented Satsuki's cooking, making her cheeks blush. He saw how kind Satsuki was to her siblings and got a glimpse of the warmth of the family. After dinner, Satsuki asked if Soichiro needed to contact someone at home. He said he had already told Takada. Satsuki looked puzzled. Soichiro explained that his mother had passed away when he was young, and 2 years ago he went to live with his father. Takada was the one who took care of him. He added that everyone helped him so he didn't feel lonely, but since he had no siblings, he didn't really understand what family meant. After seeing Satsuki's family, he realized how enjoyable family life could be. That night, before parting ways, Soichiro thanked Satsuki for her hospitality. He asked if she always rested on the school rooftop. She said she only went up there when the weather was nice. Satsuki then asked if Soichiro planned to steal her favorite spot there. They realized they hadn't even properly introduced themselves yet. Satsuki said her name and mentioned she was in the 2nd grade, while Soichiro said he was in the 1st grade. Satsuki already knew Soichiro's name and also knew he was from the royal family. She advised him to be careful on the way home. Soichiro was surprised that Satsuki already knew about him. When he got back to the palace, Takada immediately approached him, feeling relieved that he had finally returned. She apologized for not realizing he had left the bathroom until he contacted her. Takada asked where he had dinner since he told her earlier that he had already eaten. Soichiro then asked Takada if the weather would be clear the next day because he wanted to meet Satsuki again on the school rooftop. At that moment, Hikaru was looking through her father's photo album from his high school days. She didn't expect that her father actually looked quite similar to Shu. Soichiro mentioned that his face looked a bit boring, but despite that, he was still a king. At the same time, Satsuki reminded Soichiro to clean up while he was cooking. Soichiro apologized and explained to his children that even a king is just an ordinary human being. He thought about wanting to live like a regular person after meeting Satsuki. Shu said that even though they live ordinary lives, they're still the royal family who draw attention when they go out and have to participate in official events. He then asked if their father ever doubted making their mother go through all those hardships. Soichiro said that it was Satsuki who invited him to step out of his royal shell. Satsuki told him to smile widely when people greeted him and to treat others more kindly. Thanks to Satsuki, Soichiro could smile naturally, which made his face look less boring. Not only that, he also started to understand what he needed to do. According to him, a king's duty is to create a family that lives happily together. The next day, Shu asked Hana to meet him on the school rooftop. Hana didn't understand what Shu wanted to talk about and even wondered if maybe Shu found her annoying. Shu called her up, and he admitted that he still hadn't found a reason to become king. Maybe it was because he always saw Kanade wanting to be king for her own sake, but at that moment, Shu realized that he wanted to be like his father. Hana wondered if Shu was planning to separate from her because he was going to become king. Shu quickly grabbed Hana's hand and accidentally, it teleported to the North Pole. The effect of his breakout power was still lingering. Hana thought that Shu might leave her alone there. She started running, but Shu caught her hand because he wanted to say something. Hana said she knew that they would probably have to part ways and that she would distance herself from Shu. She even said she would give up on being with him. Hana admitted that she enjoyed talking and going home with him, but she felt she wasn't worthy of being with a prince and might just hold Shu back. She began to cry. Shu said that maybe he would be a burden to Hana, but to him, she was brave for expressing her feelings in front of many people. He asked if she wanted to stay by his side even if he became king, and that was the answer to Hana's confession of love for Shu. Just as they were about to hug, Hana suddenly froze from the cold. That night, a man was nearly struck by a falling steel beam from a crane. Fortunately, Akane showed up just in time to save him. She asked if he was hurt. The man thanked her for rescuing him, but Akane simply said she was doing what she believed was right. Before leaving, she told him to call for her whenever he was in trouble, because protecting the peace of the people was her duty. She used the alias Scarlet Bloom. Earlier, Akane had given a speech as part of her campaign. She said that her goal in becoming the king was to protect the peace of all citizens. Her delivery was shaky and nervous, and Aoi kept cheering her on. Not long after, a TV crew arrived to cover her speech. Akane looked terrified and couldn't hide how embarrassed she felt. Aoi told her it was actually a good thing. This way, everyone could hear her speech on TV. Akane said that if she became the king, she would abolish the rule about surveillance cameras so everyone could live peacefully and freely. But she quickly turned her back to the crowd, unable to handle all the eyes on her. Aoi continued to encourage her and asked her to keep going with her speech. The people in front of her started cheering and clapping. Overwhelmed by embarrassment, Akane ran away. That night, their siblings were watching a movie called Rose Typhoon. That gave Aoi an idea to turn Akane into a masked hero. She shared the idea with Kanade. According to Aoi, if Akane's identity was hidden, she might be more willing to help people. Plus, if she revealed her identity later on, it could skyrocket her popularity. Aoi was also worried that Akane's personality might not change and that she would continue to struggle. She knew Akane was trying hard in her own way, but Aoi believed that having experiences where she could act bravely in front of people would help her build confidence little by little. Kanade went to get a pair of disguise glasses. When more, these glasses made it so others couldn't recognize the person. Kanade suggested that it would be better for Akane to wear the glasses rather than going full-on masked hero. Aoi thanked Kanade for taking the trouble to make them. She hadn't expected Kanade to bring the glasses all the way from her room. Kanade explained that in order to reduce production costs, the glasses' disguise effect would only work while Akane was wearing them. However, their effectiveness would be weaker around people who already knew about the glasses' function. After that, Aoi gave the glasses to Akane and explained how they worked. To test them out, she brought Akane to Shu and asked if he recognized the girl with the glasses. Shu, who had already been told about the glasses by Kanade, said he didn't know her. He even said she looked cute. Then Aoi brought Akane in front of Teru and Shiori and asked if they recognized the girl with the glasses. Both of them said no. It turned out Kanade had already warned Teru to pretend not to recognize Akane when she wore the glasses, saying the lie was for the sake of justice. After Shiori lied and said she didn't recognize her, she started crying. Teru said that maybe Shiori was scared because a stranger suddenly appeared in their house. Akane then took off the glasses and Shiori immediately hugged her. Akane apologized for scaring her. After that, the masked hero plan officially began. The next day, a little girl's cat got stuck in a tree. Hajime and his friend couldn't help because it was too high. Not long after, Akane showed up to rescue the cat. Hajime recognized her, but Akane insisted she was Scarlet Bloom. Hajime's friend asked if Akane was cosplaying, but Hajime played along and encouraged him to just believe that Scarlet Bloom had saved them. They both thanked Scarlet Bloom for the help. From that moment on, Akane continued helping people. She retrieved balloons, caught criminals, and even saved a stranded whale. She felt happy because she was truly enjoying her life. During one of her heroic moments, Hajime joined a group of Akane's fans in cheering her on, all of them chanting Scarlet Bloom's name. That night, Aoi and Misaki asked Haruka how people online were reacting. Haruka told them that Scarlet Bloom was trending and getting a lot of attention. Aoi was happy to hear that everything was going smoothly. News about Scarlet Bloom saving the whale even aired on television. Later, the TV announced the updated rankings of the Sakurada children. Akane's rank had gone up to 3rd place, while Kanade stayed in 2nd. Akane was really happy that her rank improved since becoming Scarlet Bloom. She wondered how her rank could rise even though she was hiding her identity. Aoi was confident that Akane's speech was the reason behind it, but Akane still seemed unsure. Shun recalled how, when they were younger, Akane used to say she wanted to protect the peace in their town. Teru added that Akane was really cool. Shu then mimicked a younger version of Scarlet Bloom, which made Akane feel embarrassed. Hikaru was about to mention that her friends also knew, but Aoi quickly covered her mouth and pulled her aside to talk. Later, Akane asked Hikaru what Aoi had said. Hikaru looked nervous and refused to eat her cake. She could give it to Akane but accidentally called her Scarlet Bloom. Seeing this, Aoi immediately took Hikaru aside again for another talk. On Sunday, Akane went shopping with Karen. Akane looked anxious around the security cameras and Karen asked if she was okay. Akane said she had made some progress dealing with her shyness. Karen was confused by that since Akane had been acting as a masked hero all this time. Suddenly, a little girl was in danger, about to fall from her apartment. Akane quickly leaped into action and managed to catch her just in time. The girl's mother was incredibly grateful and the girl herself thanked Akane, calling her Scarlet Bloom. Akane reminded the girl not to play on the balcony again. Karen was surprised when the girl called Akane by that name and hoped Akane hadn't noticed. Back home, Hikaru asked Akane if anything good had happened, but Akane didn't say anything. Then, Akane realized she had forgotten her glasses and started wondering why the little girl recognized her as Scarlet Bloom even though she wasn't wearing them at the time. She started thinking maybe Scarlet Bloom's popularity was the reason people couldn't recognize her in everyday life. Hikaru thought the day Akane figured out the real reason was still a long way off. The next day after school, Misaki and Haruka were walking home together, planning to work on their speeches. But Misaki's classmates needed help, so she said to assist them and apologized to Haruka for not being able to walk home with him. Haruka understood and went home to write his speech on his own. Misaki had lots of ideas for her speech, but she could never turn down a classmate who needed help. Later that afternoon, Misaki returned home while the television was announcing the updated rankings for the Sakurada siblings. To everyone's surprise, Akane had surpassed Kanade and climbed up to second place. Teruo and Shiri both commented on how cool Akane was. After that, the television aired Shu's speech. Apparently, Shu was accompanied by Hana. Misaki seemed down while watching the broadcast and ended up heading back to her room. At that moment, Haruka was working on a speech. He suggested that Misaki should show off her clones during her own speech later. Misaki did not seem very enthusiastic, so Haruka asked what was bothering her. Misaki said that it felt like Shu and Akane were putting in a lot of effort. Haruka responded by saying that was exactly why Misaki could not afford to fall behind. Misaki felt that Shu and Akane were taking the idea of becoming king very seriously. Haruka did not understand what was going on with her. Misaki thought that if she became king, Haruka might see her as more special than anyone else. That thought for her was disappointing. Haruka still could not quite grasp what she meant. Misaki admitted that she had been relying on him too much, asking him for support, even asking him to write her speech, while Akane and the others were trying their best with their own strength. Because of that, Misaki felt like she was not putting in any effort at all. She began to wonder if she was really suited to become king. But Haruka reassured her that she was. He said Misaki was capable of doing what any regular person could do, and she was good at connecting with others. According to him, that meant Misaki could see the country from the perspective of an ordinary citizen. That was why Haruka believed she was the most suitable person to become king, and that was the reason he supported her. Misaki, on the other hand, said that Haruka seemed more suited to be king. But Haruka said he had already decided that he wanted to serve as the king's advisor because he felt it was the right role for him. Besides, without him, would Misaki really be able to manage on her own? Misaki thought that if Haruka truly believed she was the one most suited to be king, then she would not let that faith go to waste. She realized that she still had a long way to go to meet Haruka's expectations, but she was determined to try her best. That day was one day before Christmas Eve. Aoi was out walking with Uzuki, Nanao, and Shizuru. They happened to spot Misaki delivering a speech in front of a crowd of citizens. Misaki confidently spoke about her vision of creating a country that was bright and full of joy. Even though she did not know exactly how to make that happen yet, she said she would figure it out one step at a time. Aoi and her friends watched Misaki as she spoke. Shizuru wondered why Misaki was by herself and not accompanied by her clones. Aoi explained that Misaki wanted to handle things on her own this time. Just then, people in the crowd noticed Aoi and started talking about how kind she was. The conversation shifted from Misaki to Aoi instead. Shizuru commented that it felt like they had been through something like this before, and Nanao said they basically dealt with it every day. Aoi invited her friends to leave the area. She apologized for the situation earlier, but her friends already understood and did not mind at all. Aoi then invited them to go out for tea, but Nanao turned her down, saying a senior from work had called her in. Aoi said they could wait for her, but Nanao mentioned that she also had a club meeting after that. She quickly said goodbye and left. Aoi noted how busy Nanao seemed. Shizuru, however, apologized and said she had something to take care of. When Aoi asked if Shizuru had work too, she denied it and left quickly. Aoi then turned to Uzuki, but Uzuki said she needed to deliver medicine to her aunt. Aoi was surprised, saying she did not even know Uzuki had an aunt. Uzuki apologized and quickly headed off as well. Akane finally enjoyed her tea alone. She felt guilty because all three of her friends had their own plans, yet she had asked them to hang out. Aoi reflected on how the four of them had become such a big part of each other's daily lives. She thought that if she ever became queen in the future, moments like these might not continue. Being around her friends might become burdensome, and if she were the one to invite them out, they probably wouldn't be able to turn her down. Aoi didn't think she had the right to hold them back just so they could be with her. She tried to calm herself down, reminding herself that she also needed to grow up and become more mature. Suddenly, she received a message from Shizuru saying her plans had been canceled and she invited Aoi over to her house. Aoi immediately headed there. Shizuru welcomed her by saying that Aoi belonged to her for the day. She asked Aoi to wait outside for a bit since her room was a mess. Aoi figured there must be something in the room that Shizuru needed to hide. It had been a while since Aoi had last gone into Shizuru's room. Not long after, Shizuru sent her a message telling her to come in. Aoi stepped into the room, which was dimly lit. Then Shizuru, Uzuki, and Nanao suddenly surprised her with a birthday celebration. They knew that Aoi usually spent her birthday with her family, so they decided to celebrate it a little early, just once, so they could do it together. Aoi burst into tears and thanked her friends sincerely. Shizuru hugged her and asked her to take off her shoes. In that moment, Aoi realized that everyone has their own version of happiness, and hers was being with these three friends. She wished she could hold on to that happiness forever. That day, Aoi was genuinely happy to celebrate her birthday with her closest friends. Later that night, Akane gathered her siblings to plan another birthday celebration for Aoi, just like they did the previous year. Aoi's birthday happened to fall on Christmas Eve, and Akane divided the tasks and responsibilities among them. Misaki offered to call in her clones in case they didn't have enough people. Aoi reminded everyone to make sure she didn't find out about the surprise. Unfortunately, she overheard everything through the door. That day, the television broadcast reported that Aoi was still leading the Sakurada siblings in the polls, while Kanade and Akane continued to compete for second place. At that moment, Kazusa was watching TV with Sakin. Kazusa admitted that she planned to vote for Aoi in the upcoming election, then asked Sakin who she would vote for. Sakin confessed that she wasn't interested in the election at all, saying that no matter who won, it wouldn't really make a difference. In her view, the royal family could live without worrying about their future. Whatever they did, their lives were already set, and they lived them without hardship. She even believed that if one of the Sakurada siblings decided to become an idol, they could instantly become number one without putting in much effort. Sakin said this wasn't because she was jealous or envious of the royal family. Meanwhile, Akane kept watching Sakin's concert on TV. She was a big fan and wished she could meet Sakin in person. Hikari then suggested that Akane should just go to one of Sakin's concerts. Akane admitted she really wanted to talk to Sakin. Hikari asked why she didn't just use her royal status to do so, but Akane felt that doing that would be abusing her power, although she considered that maybe it would be okay just once. That day, Kuji informed Hikari that it might be time to reveal the true identity of Sakuraba Light to the public. He described Sakuraba Light as a young and energetic idol who had burst onto the scene like a comet and captured a lot of attention. If people found out that Sakuraba Light was actually a member of the royal family, it would have a huge impact. Once fans of both Sakuraba Light and Sakurada Hikari united, Hikari's support in the election would definitely skyrocket. In the next concert, Sakuraba Light would stop performing and fully embrace the role of royal idol Hikari. Hikari remained silent, clearly still unsure about everything. Kaji noticed and encouraged her to speak up if something was bothering her. He was a bit surprised to see that Hikari was absent-mindedly picking at her cuticle while they were in the middle of such an important conversation. On that same day, Sakin reflected on how much she had enjoyed her life as an idol. She always gave it her all. However, she felt that somehow her efforts seemed even more polished lately, perhaps because Sakuraba Light had raised the standard. Just as she was about to enter a room, she overheard Kaji saying that Sakuraba Light would be retiring after the next concert. Sakin was shocked. She couldn't understand why Sakuraba Light would step down when her career was going so well and had the potential to grow even more. She wondered if it was due to some family matter. It was only then that Sakin realized she knew almost nothing about Sakuraba Light's personal life and that she had never once talked about anything outside of work. Kazusa then greeted Sakin and invited her into the room. Inside, Kuji mentioned that even though Sakuraba Light had only recently debuted, she had already become popular thanks in part to Sakin's support. Kazusa added that although they weren't an official idol unit, the two of them had built a strong fan base. That was why Kuji wanted to organize another joint concert for both of them. However, neither Sakin nor Sakuraba Light gave any response. Kuji said he wanted to make that concert something truly special, then handed over the responsibility for Sakuraba Light to Sakin. Sakin began to suspect that this might be a farewell concert. Kuji asked both of them to take care of their health until the event. Sakin felt hurt that no one had told her the truth, but she realized that maybe she shouldn't dwell on it. After all, if Sakuraba Light had her own reasons, then Sakin had no right to question them. She had always worked alone anyway, so she figured everything would just return to how it used to be. A few days later, Kazusa informed Kaji that she had come down with the flu. Kaji told her not to come in until she recovered. He then said they might be short on staff. Hearing that, Hikari mentioned that she knew someone who could help for free. The next day, Kaji introduced Akane to Sakin. Akane would be temporarily filling in for Kazusa under the name Akaji. Akane greeted Sakin and said she would do her best to help. Sakin shook her hand, and Akane lit up with joy. Earlier, Hikari had offered the job to Akane. She told her that if Akane used her powers to change her appearance, they could keep her identity hidden. However, Akane refused to let Hikari change her looks. She preferred to rely on her trusty disguise glasses instead. When Hikari brought Akane to Kaji, Kaji treated Akane like a princess. He felt honored that Akane was willing to help him. Hikari asked Kuji not to behave that way, and Akane also said she actually felt uncomfortable when Kuji was so polite to her. Koji then called Akane a humble princess. That day, Hikari and Sakin practiced together, and Akane realized that Hikari had been working hard without anyone knowing. Hikari was still thinking about Akane and what might happen after she revealed her identity to everyone. At that moment, Sakin pointed out a mistake in Hikari's practice. Sakin ran out of drinking water and wanted to go to the convenience store, but Akane offered to buy it for her. Sakin refused because she also wanted to get some fresh air. After Sakin left, Akane asked Hikari if Sakin seemed nervous. Hikari said that Sakin was just very professional. When Sakin got to the convenience store, she realized she forgot her wallet and only bought bottled water. Sakin felt like she needed to focus more. Meanwhile, Koji met with Hikari to discuss revealing her identity to the public, but Hikari decided against it. She realized why she became an idol in the first place. At first, she became an idol for election purposes, but over time, being an idol gained a special meaning for her. She had fans, people who supported her, and she learned the importance of hard work. So everything she did was for Sakuraba Light and her fans, and she did not want to use it for anything else. Sakuraba Light could only be there thanks to her fans. Koji understood and said he would respect whatever Hikari wanted. Hikari thanked him and asked how she should tell everyone at the office who had supported her, especially Sakin. Koji suggested they think about it calmly, not knowing Sakin was overhearing them. At home, Hikari asked Aoi what she thought about a lie becoming the truth if it was kept hidden forever. Aoi said it depended on who Hikari told, but if she kept lying to herself, it would always be a lie.